The road first appeared at 1:13 in the morning. I remember the time because I checked my dashboard clock 3 different times after that, like somehow the numbers would explain what I was seeing. I'd been driving for almost 11 hours straight. My eyes burned. My lower back hurt. The coffee I bought at the last gas station had gone cold an hour earlier, but I still kept sipping it anyway. The highway was empty. No cars. No lights. Just miles of black forest on both sides of the road. That part of northern Pennsylvania always felt wrong to me at night. Too quiet. Too much space between towns. Even the radio stations faded out there. Sometimes all you could hear was static and those soft little pops from the speakers. I was halfway through a late delivery route when my GPS suddenly rerouted. The screen blinked once. Then a new road appeared. Turn right in 500 feet. I frowned at the screen. The road wasn't there a second ago. I slowed the van and looked ahead through the windshield. At first I thought the GPS was glitching again. It happened sometimes out in the mountains. But then my headlights caught a narrow dirt road cutting into the trees. No sign. No markings. Just 2 muddy tire tracks disappearing into darkness. I should have stayed on the highway. Even now, I think about that moment more than anything else. Because part of me knew something felt off immediately. But I was exhausted, and the GPS claimed it would save me almost 40 minutes. 40 minutes sounded like heaven at 1 in the morning. So I turned. The moment my tires left the pavement, the world changed. The forest swallowed the sound of the highway almost instantly. No wind. No insects. Nothing. Just the low growl of my engine and branches, scraping softly against the sides of the van. The road got narrower the farther I drove. Trees leaned over it like they were trying to close together behind me. My GPS signal flickered once, then twice. Then the map turned completely gray. I muttered under my breath and tapped the screen. Nothing. No signal. Perfect. I kept driving anyway. At first, I told myself it was normal. Mountain roads lose reception all the time. But then I noticed something strange. There were no animal sounds. No owls. No crickets. Nothing moving in the woods. I cracked my window slightly. The air smelled wet and cold, like rain-soaked dirt. And underneath that, something rotten. Not strong. Just faint enough to make me keep sniffing the air every few minutes. I drove another 10 minutes before I saw the first sign someone had been there before me. An old bicycle. It lay on its side beside the road, half buried in mud and leaves. Rust covered the frame. One wheel slowly spun in the darkness. I stared at it as I passed, then checked my mirrors. The bike disappeared behind the trees. For some reason, that bothered me more than if I'd seen a dead animal. A bicycle meant a person, and there shouldn't have been anyone out there. The road twisted deeper into the forest. Soon branches hung so low they brushed across my windshield. I started thinking about turning around, but every time I looked in the mirror, the road behind me somehow seemed darker, longer, like it stretched farther than before. I rubbed my eyes hard. That's what exhaustion does, I told myself. Your brain starts playing tricks. Then my headlights hit the cabin. I almost drove past it. It sat back from the road behind a wall of pine trees, barely visible through the darkness. A small wooden cabin. 1 story. Rotting porch. Broken windows. And a single yellow light glowing inside. I slowed immediately. My first thought was relief. Maybe someone lived there. Maybe they had a phone. Maybe they could tell me how to get back to the highway. But as I pulled closer, that feeling changed. The cabin looked abandoned. Not old in a cozy way. Old in a dead way. Parts of the roof sagged inward. The porch rails leaned crookedly. Weeds grew through the steps. Yet somehow, that light inside still burned. I parked near the edge of the road, but left the engine running. Rain began tapping softly against the windshield. Tiny drops at first, then heavier. I stared at the cabin for almost a full minute. Nothing moved. No shadows. No sound. Just that yellow light glowing through dirty curtains. I reached for my phone. No service. Of course. The rain got worse. Thunder rumbled somewhere far away. Finally, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. Cold air hit me immediately. The smell out there was stronger now. Wet wood, mud, and that same faint rotten smell underneath everything. My boots sank into soft ground as I walked toward the cabin. The porch creaked under my weight. I noticed the front door hanging slightly open. That stopped me. Not wide open, just enough to leave a thin line of darkness between the frame. I knocked once. No answer. I waited. Still nothing. The rain hammered harder against the trees behind me. I remember looking back toward the road. And for 1 second, I couldn't see my van. The darkness between the trees looked too thick, too solid. Then lightning flashed overhead. The van appeared again, exactly where I left it. I laughed nervously at myself. "Get it together," I whispered. My voice sounded strange out there. Small. I pushed the cabin door open slowly. The smell hit me first. Dust, mold, rotting wood. The air inside felt damp and heavy, like the cabin had been sealed shut for years. My flashlight moved across faded wallpaper and old furniture covered in white sheets. The yellow light came from an oil lamp sitting on a small table near the fireplace. But there was no fire, no electricity, no sign anyone had been there recently. Still, the lamp was warm. I touched the metal carefully, warm enough to burn my fingers. I pulled my hand back immediately. That made no sense. A chill crawled slowly up my arms. I swept the flashlight across the room again. That's when I noticed the photographs. Dozens of them lined the walls. Old black and white pictures. Families, hunters, children standing beside the forest. Every photo looked faded with age, except for one, near the hallway. A color photograph, newer than the others. I stepped closer. 3 people stood in front of the cabin smiling at the camera. A man, a woman, and a little girl maybe 8 years old. The photo quality looked recent, maybe early 2000s. But that wasn't the part that bothered me. The part that bothered me was the delivery van parked behind them. My van, same company logo, same dent near the rear bumper. I stared at the picture so long my flashlight started shaking. "No," I whispered. "That wasn't possible." I moved closer until my nose almost touched the frame. The license plate was blurry, but the van looked identical. Then I noticed something else. The man in the photo wasn't smiling normally. His eyes looked wrong. Not at the camera, past it, like he was staring at whoever took the picture, or warning them. A floorboard creaked somewhere deeper inside the cabin. I froze instantly. The sound came from the hallway. Soft, slow, like someone shifting their weight carefully. I turned my flashlight toward the darkness. Nothing there, but the hallway seemed longer than before. The shadows deeper. I listened carefully. Silence. Then, another creak. Closer this time. I backed toward the front door without taking my eyes off the hallway. My heart thumped so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then I saw it. Mud. Fresh mud. Wet footprints leading out of the hallway. Bare feet. Human. The prints stopped 3 feet in front of me, as if whoever made them had simply vanished into thin air. Another floorboard creaked upstairs. Slow. Heavy. Not hiding anymore. Something was inside that cabin with me. And I suddenly understood the worst part. The light hadn't been left on for me. It was waiting. I couldn't move. The footprints stopped right in front of me. Wet mud glistened on the wooden floorboards under my flashlight beam. Bare human footprints, fresh enough that water still dripped from them. But there was nobody there. I remember my breathing becoming shallow, fast. My chest felt tight, like the air inside the cabin had suddenly gotten thinner. Another slow creak came from upstairs. Not loud. Careful. Like someone standing very still had shifted their weight by accident. I took another step backward toward the front door. The floor beneath me groaned softly, and then the yellow oil lamp flickered. Just once, the shadows inside the cabin moved across the walls like dark water. For a second, I thought I saw another person standing near the hallway. Tall, thin, but the light steadied again, and the shape vanished. I kept staring anyway. My flashlight shook harder in my hand now. Part of me wanted to run back to the van immediately. But outside, rain hammered against the roof so hard it sounded almost violent. Wind pushed through the trees in long, low moans. The storm had gotten worse while I'd been inside. And somehow, the cabin still felt safer than the woods. That thought scared me more than anything else. I slowly crouched beside the footprints. The mud looked dark red under the flashlight for a second before my brain corrected itself. Just dirt. Just wet dirt. I reached toward one of the prints carefully. Still warm. I pulled my hand back instantly. That made no sense. Mud shouldn't feel warm. Another creak upstairs. Longer this time. I looked toward the ceiling. There was definitely someone up there. Or something moving. I whispered hello. My voice barely came out. No answer. Only the rain. Then, a soft sound drifted down from upstairs. Not footsteps. Not movement. Breathing. Slow breathing. I froze completely. You know those moments where your body understands danger before your brain catches up. That's what it felt like. Every muscle locked. My skin turned cold. The breathing lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then stopped. Silence filled the cabin again. I stood there listening so hard my ears started ringing. Nothing. I should have left. I know that now. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when you're tired and scared. Your brain starts needing answers more than safety. I told myself maybe another traveler had gotten stranded there too. Maybe they were hurt. Maybe they were hiding from me upstairs right now. That explanation felt thin, but it was still better than the others forming in my head. I swallowed hard and moved slowly toward the hallway. The muddy footprints stayed beside me like they were guiding the way. The cabin smelled worse back there. Damp wood, mold, and something sweet underneath it. A rotten sweetness. The hallway wallpaper peeled off in long strips. Water stains spread across the ceiling like dark veins. Halfway down the hall, I noticed another photograph hanging crooked on the wall. This one was newer too. A man standing beside a deer he'd hunted. Same cabin porch behind him. Same yellow oil lamp glowing through the window. But the strange part wasn't the picture. It was the date written at the bottom. October 12, 2023. Less than a year ago. I stared at it confused. How could anyone still be living here? The cabin looked abandoned for decades. Thunder cracked outside suddenly. The lights inside flickered again. This time the oil lamp dimmed almost completely before returning. And during that moment of darkness, I heard footsteps upstairs. Vast, 3 quick steps, like someone hurrying away from the top of the stairs. I spun toward the sound instantly. At the end of the hallway stood a staircase, disappearing into darkness. I hadn't noticed it before. The top floor looked completely black. No light at all. But I knew somebody had moved up there. I could feel it. The air itself felt tense now, like the cabin was holding its breath with me. Then I noticed something else. More footprints. These were smaller, child-sized. They came down the staircase slowly, 1 step at a time, before suddenly stopping halfway down. The prints didn't continue. They simply ended. I stared at them for so long my flashlight dimmed slightly. That impossible feeling returned again, like my brain couldn't fully process what I was seeing. My mouth had gone completely dry. I whispered to myself, no, 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 because there was no way those footprints should exist. Not unless someone had vanished in the middle of the stairs. The storm outside roared louder. Rainwater leaked through the ceiling somewhere deeper, inside the cabin. Drip, drip, drip. Then came another sound. A radio, very faint, playing somewhere upstairs. Old music crackled softly through static. I couldn't make out the song, but hearing it made the cabin feel even more wrong somehow, like walking into somebody else's memory. I should have walked out right then. Instead, I climbed the stairs. Slowly, each step creaked under my boots. The child-sized footprints stayed frozen halfway down beside me. I avoided looking directly at them. At the top of the stairs, the air felt colder immediately. The second floor was just one narrow hallway with 3 doors, all closed. The radio music drifted from behind the last door on the left. I moved toward it carefully. The wood floor felt uneven beneath my feet. And then I noticed fresh scratches along the walls. Deep ones, like someone had dragged metal across the wallpaper. Some of them looked recent. My flashlight passed over faded words carved into the wood beside the doorframe. Help US. The letters were shaky, uneven, almost hidden beneath layers of old paint. I stopped breathing for a second. My stomach twisted hard. The radio inside the room suddenly grew louder, then softer again. Static crackled between pieces of music. I reached for the doorknob slowly. It was ice cold. I turned it carefully. Locked. The music stopped instantly. Not faded out. Stopped. Like someone inside had turned the radio off the second I touched the handle. The silence afterward felt enormous. I stood there staring at the door. Then I heard movement behind me. Very soft. Bare feet against wood. I turned around immediately. Nothing there. But the hallway behind me somehow looked longer now. Darker. My flashlight beam barely reached the stairs anymore. And near the top step, fresh, muddy footprints had appeared. Adult-sized. Standing still. Facing me. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard it hurt. Because I hadn't heard anyone come upstairs. I backed away from the footprints slowly. 1 step. Then another. The floor creaked under me. And suddenly, one of the muddy prints changed shape slightly, like pressure had just been lifted from it, as if someone invisible had taken a step forward. I couldn't breathe. Another print appeared beside it, fresh mud spreading across dry wood. Step. Another one. Step. Coming toward me. My body finally reacted before my brain did. I ran. The hallway blurred around me as I stumbled toward the stairs. Behind me, slow, wet footsteps continued across the floorboards. Not chasing. Walking. Calm. Patient. I nearly fell down the stairs trying to get away. The oil lamp downstairs flickered wildly now, throwing shadows across the walls like moving figures. I rushed toward the front door and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't open. Panic exploded through my chest. I pulled harder. Still stuck. Rain battered the cabin outside. Wind screamed through the trees. And then I heard something upstairs again. A child laughing softly. Not happy laughter. Weak laughter. Like somebody trying to remember how. Tears suddenly filled my eyes from pure fear and exhaustion. I yanked the door again with everything I had. This time it flew open so fast I stumbled onto the porch. Cold rain hit my face immediately. I gasped for air and looked toward the road. My van was still there, but something was wrong. The driver's side door stood open. I knew I'd shut it earlier. Lightning flashed across the forest. For 1 second, the trees lit up bright white, and I saw people standing between them. At least 5, maybe more, perfectly still, watching the cabin, watching me. Then darkness swallowed them again. I stood frozen in the rain, and from somewhere deep inside the cabin behind me, I heard my own voice whisper my name. I should have driven away the second I reached the van. Even now, that's the part that keeps me awake. The driver's side door hung open in the rain, swaying gently back and forth. Water dripped from the seat onto the muddy ground below. But my keys were gone. I checked the ignition twice. Then my pockets. Nothing. A cold feeling spread through my stomach. I knew I'd left the keys in the van when I ran to the cabin earlier. I remembered the sound they made hitting the cup holder. Now they were gone. The storm rolled above the trees in slow growls. Rainwater soaked through my jacket as I stood there breathing hard. The people I saw in the woods were gone too. Or maybe they'd never been there. That thought didn't comfort me anymore, because something inside the cabin had spoken with my voice. Not almost my voice, my exact voice. Soft, whispering my name from somewhere deep inside the dark hallway. I slowly looked back toward the cabin. The front door still stood open. Warm yellow light spilled across the porch through the rain. For one brief second, I thought about running into the woods instead. Just leaving the van. Just walking until sunrise. But the forest felt wrong. Too still. Too deep. And I kept thinking about those figures between the trees. Watching. Waiting. The only real shelter was the cabin. So against every instinct in my body, I went back inside. The moment I stepped through the doorway, the smell hit me again. Wet wood. Dust. That sweet rotten scent underneath everything. The oil lamp burned lower now. Shadows stretched longer across the walls. And the cabin had changed. I know how crazy that sounds, but it had. The hallway looked narrower somehow. The wallpaper seemed darker. Even the air felt heavier, harder to breathe. I shut the front door carefully behind me. Immediately, the rain outside sounded distant again. Muted. Like the cabin existed separate from the storm somehow. I stood still, listening. No footsteps upstairs. No breathing. Nothing. Just the soft ticking sound from the oil lamp flame. Then I heard another noise. Very faint. A slow knocking sound. Below me. Knock. 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 I looked down at the floorboards. The sound came again. 3 soft knocks beneath the wood. I backed away immediately. My pulse hammered inside my ears. For a moment, I thought someone might actually be trapped under the cabin. The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Then the floor beneath my right boot creaked strangely. Hollow. Different from the other boards. I froze. Slowly, I crouched down and aimed the flashlight at the floor. One plank near the fireplace sat slightly higher than the others. Fresh scratches marked the edges, like someone had pried it open recently. My hands shook as I knelt beside it. I remember whispering, "Don't do this." But I already knew I would. Curiosity had me completely by then. I slid my fingers beneath the loose board and pulled upward carefully. The plank lifted with a long, dry creak. A dark space waited underneath. Cold air drifted out immediately, and with it came that rotten smell, much stronger now. I nearly dropped the flashlight. There was a narrow set of wooden steps hidden beneath the floor. A basement. Tiny. Pitch black. The knocking came again, this time from below. Knock. 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 Then silence. I stared into the darkness so long my eyes watered. Every instinct screamed at me not to go down there. But something else bothered me more. The thought that someone else already had. I grabbed the oil lamp from the table and started down the steps. The basement ceiling was low enough that I had to duck. Dirt walls surrounded me on both sides. The air felt damp and freezing cold compared to upstairs. Water dripped slowly somewhere in the dark. The beam from my flashlight shook across shelves filled with old jars and rusted tools. Then it landed on a chair. A single wooden chair facing the far wall. Ropes hung from the arms. I stopped moving. The ropes looked old, but not ancient. One of them had been cut recently. The fibers still looked pale where the rope had snapped apart. My stomach twisted hard. The rotten smell was unbearable down there. I pulled my shirt over my nose and kept moving carefully. That's when I saw the recorder. An old cassette recorder sat on a small table near the wall. Beside it rested dozens of tapes stacked in neat rows, each one labeled with dates. Some went back almost 20 years. Others were recent, very recent. My flashlight passed over one marked just 3 months earlier. The knocking sound came again suddenly, louder now, directly behind the wall. Knock, knock, knock. I spun toward the dirt wall immediately. Nothing there, but the sound had come from inside it, like someone buried beneath the earth was tapping slowly from the other side. I backed away, breathing hard. Then the cassette recorder clicked on by itself. I nearly dropped the lamp. Static hissed softly through the speaker. A man's voice followed. Weak. Tired. If somebody finds this, don't trust the road. I froze completely. The voice trembled like the man had been crying. Rain crackled faintly in the background of the recording. Just like tonight. I tried leaving 3 times, the man whispered. Every road leads back here after dark. Static interrupted him briefly. Then came another voice. A woman this time, crying softly. He said we could stay warm here, she whispered. Please, if anybody hears this, my son's name is Caleb. The tape distorted badly after that. Then silence. I stared at the recorder with my heart pounding. The next tape clicked automatically. A different voice began speaking immediately. This one older. Calm. Too calm. They keep arriving during storms, the man said softly. The lost ones always follow the road eventually. A chill spread slowly through my body. The voice sounded familiar somehow. Not someone I knew, but familiar. Like hearing a song you haven't heard since childhood. I tried warning them at first, the voice continued, but the cabin gets lonely. The speaker crackled again. I think it likes having people here. My mouth went dry. The basement suddenly felt smaller around me. The oil lamp flame flickered hard. And somewhere above me, floorboards creaked upstairs. Slow footsteps. Someone moving across the cabin. I looked toward the basement stairs. The darkness at the top looked thicker now. Almost solid. The recorder clicked again. Another tape started playing. This time I heard my own voice. I swear to God. My exact voice. Breathing hard. Panicked. There's somebody upstairs, the recording whispered. My knees nearly gave out. Because I had never said those words before. Not out loud. Yet somehow there they were. Recorded. The tape continued. I found the footprints, my voice whispered shakily. I don't think we're alone down here. I stumbled backward from the table. The flashlight beam shook wildly across the walls. That's when I noticed them. Names. Hundreds of names carved into the dirt walls around the basement. Some old, some fresh. Dates beside them. Missing dates. Death dates. And near the recorder, one name freshly carved into the wall. Mine. The cuts in the dirt still looked wet. Above me, footsteps crossed the cabin slowly. Heavy, patient. A floorboard groaned directly over my head. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then silence. I couldn't think straight anymore. Exhaustion and fear tangled together inside my head until everything felt unreal. The recorder clicked again. Another tape. A child's voice this time. Soft crying. Then whispering. He keeps us here when it rains. The child sniffled quietly. He says the road brings him lonely people. Thunder shook the cabin overhead. The basement light flickered again. And then the recorder spoke one final sentence in my own voice. But I never saw his face. The tape stopped. Complete silence filled the basement. Then from somewhere upstairs, I heard the front door slowly creak open, followed by wet footsteps entering the cabin. The wet footsteps moved slowly across the cabin above me. Not hurried, not hiding, just calm, steady steps crossing the floorboards one at a time. I stood frozen in the basement, staring toward the staircase, while the cassette recorder hissed softly beside me. My own name was still carved into the dirt wall. Fresh, like whoever wrote it had only finished minutes earlier. Another floorboard groaned upstairs, closer to the basement door now. I grabbed the flashlight and backed away from the stairs instinctively. The oil lamp flame trembled in my hand. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to stay perfectly silent forever. Then the footsteps stopped directly above me. Complete silence followed. No breathing. No movement. Nothing. I realized I was holding my breath and slowly forced air back into my lungs. The basement suddenly felt too small. The dirt walls looked tighter somehow, closing inward beneath the weak yellow light. And that rotten smell, it was stronger now. Not just mold anymore. Something older. Like wet earth covering something dead. Then came a new sound. A soft dragging noise overhead. like furniture being pulled across the floor upstairs. Slow, heavy, I stared toward the ceiling. Dust drifted down through the cracks in the wood. The dragging continued for several seconds, then stopped abruptly. Silence again. My brain kept trying to build normal explanations. Maybe another traveler was trapped there too. Maybe somebody lived in the woods nearby. Maybe the recordings were some sick prank. But none of it explained the tapes, or the footprints, or hearing my own voice speaking words I'd never said. The storm outside had weakened slightly by then. Thunder sounded farther away now. That meant dawn couldn't be too far off. I clung to that thought immediately. Morning, roads, people, reality. If I could just survive until daylight, maybe everything would make sense again. I slowly moved toward the basement stairs. Every step felt dangerous. The wood creaked softly beneath my boots. Halfway up, I stopped. The cabin above looked completely dark now. The oil lamp upstairs had gone out. Only gray moonlight leaked through the windows. I listened carefully. Nothing moved. I climbed the rest of the way slowly and pushed the loose floorboard aside. The living room looked empty, but something had changed. The wooden chair near the fireplace now faced the basement entrance. I stared at it immediately. I knew for a fact it had faced the window earlier. My chest tightened again. Someone had moved it while I was downstairs. The rain outside softened to a gentle tapping against the roof. The cabin itself felt quieter too, almost sleepy. I stepped fully into the room and replaced the floorboard carefully behind me. That's when I noticed the mud. Fresh footprints covered the cabin floor now. Dozens of them. Bare feet. Adult footprints. Child footprints. Some leading toward the hallway. Others circling the room. But none leading to the front door. The mud tracks simply appeared, then vanished. My flashlight followed them slowly across the floorboards. One set stopped directly beside the couch. Another stopped near the staircase. And near the front window, a tiny pair of footprints ended inches from the glass. Like a child had stood there watching the woods, watching something outside. A cold shiver ran through me, because suddenly I understood something horrible. The footprints weren't moving through the cabin. They were gathering inside it. I turned toward the front door immediately. Still closed, still locked. I moved carefully toward it, trying not to step on the muddy prints. The closer I got, the more exhausted I felt. Not sleepy, heavy, like the cabin itself wanted me to sit down and stay there. My thoughts started drifting strangely too. Slow, foggy. I caught myself staring at the oil lamp for almost 30 seconds without realizing it. Then I heard whispering. Soft voices, all around me, too quiet to understand. I spun around fast. Nobody there, but the whispering continued faintly beneath the rain. At first, I thought it came from upstairs, then from the hallway, then from behind me. The voices kept shifting, like people speaking softly from different corners of the cabin. I covered my ears. The whispers didn't stop, and mixed inside them, I heard my own voice again, not saying words this time, just breathing, right beside me. I rushed to the front door and pulled it open. Cold air hit my face instantly. The forest outside looked pale gray now. Dawn was finally coming. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees almost buckled. I could see the road again, and my van, still parked near the trees. I hurried off the porch and nearly slipped in the mud. The rain had mostly stopped, leaving fog drifting low across the ground. Everything outside felt unnaturally still. No birds, no insects, nothing. Even the trees barely moved. I reached the van quickly and climbed inside, slamming the door behind me. For the first time all night, I finally felt a small sense of safety. Solid metal, locked doors, something familiar. My keys sat in the ignition, exactly where I remembered leaving them. I stared at them for a long second. My hands trembled so badly, I struggled to turn the engine over. Finally, the van started with a rough growl. I almost cried from relief. The headlights cut across the forest again. The cabin stood quiet behind the fog now. Just an old, broken building in the woods. Nothing more. That's what I kept telling myself. I shifted into reverse immediately. But before backing up, I glanced toward the passenger seat and froze. A photograph rested there, one I had never seen before. The picture looked old and water damaged. It showed the cabin during winter. Snow covered the roof. The trees looked dead and black around it. And standing on the porch was me. I nearly dropped the photo. The man in the picture wore my delivery jacket. My face looked pale and exhausted, but I knew instantly it wasn't me. The photograph looked decades old. The colors faded badly. And behind the version of me standing on the porch, a tall figure watched from the doorway, too dark to make out clearly. I threw the photograph onto the floor immediately. My chest hurt now from panic. I jammed the van into reverse and pulled away fast. Mud sprayed behind the tires as I backed onto the road. Then I drove. Vast branches scraped violently along both sides of the van as I sped through the forest. The fog thickened around the road. Twice I nearly slid into the trees. But I didn't care anymore. I just wanted distance. Sunlight slowly began appearing through the woods ahead. Weak gray morning light. I remember laughing nervously when I saw it. I actually thought I made it out. Then I passed the bicycle again. Same spot beside the road. Same rusted wheel slowly spinning. Only this time, there was a person sitting beside it. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, wearing a yellow raincoat. Her head tilted downward toward the mud. I slammed the brakes instinctively. The van skidded sideways slightly before stopping. For a moment, I just stared through the windshield. The girl didn't move. Rain dripped softly from her hood. I looked around quickly. No other cars. No houses. Nothing. My heart pounded hard. Every survival instinct told me to keep driving. But she looked so small sitting there alone. I lowered the passenger window slightly. "Hey," I shouted. No response. The girl stayed perfectly still. I opened the door carefully and stepped out. Cold morning fog wrapped around me immediately. "Are you okay?" I called again. Still nothing. I took a few cautious steps closer. And then the girl slowly raised one arm, pointing toward the woods behind me. I turned instinctively. At first I saw only trees. Then the fog shifted slightly, and I realized there were people standing between them. Not 5 this time. Dozens. Silent figures scattered deep through the forest, watching. Some tall, some small, none moving. My stomach dropped, because among them, I finally saw the man from the recordings. Tall, thin, standing partly behind a pine tree. And beside him, I saw myself. The other me stared back from the woods with hollow, exhausted eyes, like he'd been standing there all night waiting for me to notice him. Then the little girl spoke behind me for the first time. Softly, almost kindly. "He still lives here." I turned back toward her instantly, but the roadside was empty now. The bicycle lay, abandoned in the mud again, its rusted wheel spinning slowly in the silence. And somewhere deep in the forest, I heard my own voice calling my name once more. The man at the gas station looked at me strangely when I told him where I was headed. He stopped wiping the coffee machine and just stared for a second too long. "Blackwood?" he asked quietly. I nodded. The old man glanced toward the foggy windows behind me, like he expected someone else to be listening. Then he leaned closer across the counter. "You staying up in the tower?" "Yeah," I said, "just for the summer." He didn't answer right away. His fingers kept rubbing the same dark stain on the rag over and over. Finally he muttered, "Don't go walking at night if you hear voices." I laughed a little at that. Not because it was funny, because I thought he was joking. But the old man never smiled. Outside, rain dripped softly from the gas station roof, while my beat-up Subaru idled near Pump 3. The mountains behind the station looked enormous through the mist, endless dark trees climbing toward gray clouds. I should have turned around right there. Instead, I bought another coffee and kept driving north. At the time, the Firewatch job sounded perfect. 3 months alone in the mountains. Good pay. No people. No campus noise. No awkward conversations. After my breakup that spring, I wanted distance from everything. I stopped answering friends, stopped attending classes unless I absolutely had to. Some days I barely left my apartment. The job posting almost felt written for someone like me. Seasonal FIRWATCH, remote location. Isolation required. I remember staring at those words late one night on my laptop screen, while rain tapped against my dorm window. Isolation required. That part sounded comforting back then. By the time I reached Blackwood Forest, evening had already settled across the mountains. Fog drifted low between the trees. The road narrowed into cracked pavement, surrounded by endless pine forest on both sides. No houses. No traffic. Nothing. Even my phone signal disappeared about 20 miles back. The forest itself felt ancient somehow. The trees grew too close together. Their branches twisted over the road like fingers locking shut above me. And every now and then, I noticed strange wooden crosses tied to certain trees with faded red cloth. Some looked old. Others looked newer. Fresh cuts still pale in the wood. I tried not to think too much about them. The ranger station finally appeared just before dark. A small wooden building beside the road, with a rusted green roof. One truck sat parked outside. The only other person there was a heavy-set ranger named Walter. Gray beard, tired eyes, the kind of face that looked permanently disappointed. He barely shook my hand. "You're late," he muttered. "Road construction." "There's no road construction." That answer stayed with me longer than it should have. Walter handed me a ring of keys and walked me through the basics quickly. Radio check-ins every evening. Watch for smoke. Stay near the tower after sunset. His voice stayed flat the entire time, like he'd given the speech too many times before. But when we reached the subject of the old trails deeper in the forest, something changed. He stopped talking for a second. Then he said quietly, "If you see lights below the trees at night, don't go looking for them." I frowned. Campers. No, just that one word. No explanation after it. The silence that followed made my stomach tighten slightly. Walter grabbed another cigarette from his pocket and lit it with shaky fingers. "You'll hear stories," he continued. Most are nonsense. Like what? He stared toward the mountains behind me. People disappear up here sometimes. The wind outside picked up softly against the station windows. Walter exhaled smoke slowly. Hikers, hunters, drifters, usually tourists. Animal attacks. No bodies. That answer landed strangely in my chest. No bodies. He looked back at me finally. But sometimes radios pick things up at night. I forced a small smile. Ghost stories. Walter didn't smile back. Just locked the tower after dark. Then he grabbed his truck keys and walked outside before I could ask anything else. I stood there alone, listening to his engine fade into the mountains. The ranger station suddenly felt too quiet after he left. The sun had nearly disappeared by then. I loaded my supplies into the Subaru and followed the narrow dirt road leading toward the tower. That road climbed higher into the mountains for almost 40 minutes. The farther I drove, the stranger the forest became. The trees blocked most of the remaining light. Fog drifted thicker now, swirling across the road in pale waves. At one point, I passed an abandoned pickup truck half swallowed by vines beside the trail. No plates. Windows broken. The driver's side door hanging open. I slowed down instinctively. Something about it bothered me immediately. Not the truck itself. The feeling around it. Like somebody had just stepped away moments earlier. I kept driving. Darkness settled fully by the time I reached the tower. It stood alone above the trees on a rocky ridge. Tall, narrow, old wood darkened by years of storms. The fire watch cabin rested at the top like a lonely little box against the night sky. A single outdoor light glowed weakly near the stairs. The wind up there sounded different. Stronger, colder. I grabbed my bags and climbed slowly. Each metal step creaked beneath my weight. The forest stretched endlessly below me in every direction. Black waves of trees disappearing into fog. I remember stopping halfway up and realizing something strange. No animal sounds. No crickets. No owls. Nothing. The entire mountain felt silent. The cabin itself was small but clean. One bed. One radio desk. Tiny kitchen. Old maps covering the walls. And windows everywhere. That part unsettled me immediately. At night, the windows made it feel like the forest was watching you from every direction. I unpacked quietly while the wind rattled the tower beneath me. Around 10 o'clock, the radio crackled for the first time. I nearly jumped. Static hissed through the speaker. Then Walter's tired voice came through. Tower 4 radio check. I grabbed the mic quickly. Yeah, I'm here. A pause followed. Then Walter asked, You see anything unusual yet? The question caught me off guard. Like what? More silence. Finally he muttered, Never mind. The radio died again. I stared at it for several seconds afterward, then looked out the windows. The forest below had vanished beneath fog now. The trees looked like shadows beneath moving gray clouds. I tried distracting myself with a book for a while. Didn't work. The tower creaked constantly in the wind. Tiny noises echoed through the walls. Every sound made me glance toward the windows again. Around midnight, I noticed the first light. At first, I thought it was another ranger vehicle moving below the mountain. A small orange glow drifting slowly between the trees far beneath the tower. But roads didn't run through that part of the forest, and the light wasn't moving normally. It floated, slowly weaving between the trees. Then another appeared farther away. Then another. 3 lights now, all moving separately through the darkness below. I stood at the window, staring down into the forest. My mouth slowly went dry. The lights looked like old lanterns, dim orange circles drifting through the fog. No flashlights, no headlights, lanterns, and they were moving deeper into the woods, away from the road, away from civilization. The radio suddenly crackled again behind me. Static exploded loudly through the speaker. Then a voice whispered something. Not Walter, not a ranger, a woman, soft, weak. Help me. I froze completely. The voice crackled again. Please. Then silence. I grabbed the radio immediately. Hello. Nothing answered. Only static. I checked the signal settings with trembling hands. Dead channel. No incoming frequency. My pulse hammered inside my ears now. Outside, the lantern lights continued drifting deeper into the trees. And then, one of them stopped moving. Slowly, impossibly slowly. It turned toward the tower, like whoever carried it had finally noticed me watching from above. The lantern stayed pointed at the tower for almost a full minute. I know that sounds impossible from that distance, but when you spend enough time alone in the woods, your eyes learn how to notice things, tiny movements, shapes between trees, changes in light. And that light below me had stopped moving completely. Watching, the fog drifted slowly around it, while the other lanterns continued deeper through the forest. I stood frozen beside the window, gripping the radio mic too tightly. The woman's voice still echoed faintly in my head. Help me. Not scared. Not screaming. Just tired. Like she'd been asking for help for a very long time. Finally, the lantern below the tower moved again, slowly turning away before disappearing deeper into the trees. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every few minutes, I checked the windows again. The lights never came back, but something else did. At around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps below the tower, soft crunching sounds moving through gravel. I held my breath immediately. The footsteps circled slowly beneath me once, then stopped. I grabbed the flashlight near the bed and aimed it carefully through the floor window beside the trapdoor ladder. Nothing, just darkness and drifting fog. But deep down, I knew somebody had been standing beneath the tower, listening. The next morning felt unreal. Sunlight poured across the mountains like nothing strange had happened. Birds chirped through the trees. Wind moved softly through the forest below. Blackwood looked beautiful during daylight. That almost made it worse, because part of me started wondering if exhaustion had caused everything. Maybe the lights belonged to hikers. Maybe the radio interference came from another tower. Maybe I was letting the isolation get into my head already. That explanation lasted until noon. That's when I found the footprints. They circled the base of the tower in perfect silence. Bare footprints. Human. Dozens of them pressed into the wet dirt. Some small, some adult-sized, all leading out from the trees, and all stopping directly beneath my tower. Not continuing away, not turning back, just ending there, like whoever made them had vanished. A cold pressure settled into my chest as I stared down at them. The dirt still looked fresh. One of the prints even held rainwater from the night before. I looked toward the surrounding forest. The trees stood motionless beneath the afternoon sun. But suddenly, the woods didn't feel empty anymore. They felt occupied. I radioed Walter immediately. Static crackled before his voice answered. What is it? I found footprints around the tower. Silent. Then animal tracks. No bare feet. Another pause, longer this time. Finally, Walter sighed softly into the radio. Stay out of the woods after dark. That's not an answer. You wanted the job, he muttered. Now you got it. The radio cut dead before I could reply. I spent the rest of the day trying to distract myself. Cleaning, organizing supplies, reading old ranger logs stacked inside a cabinet beneath the desk. Most were boring. Weather reports, fire sightings, equipment notes. But one log from 6 years earlier caught my attention. The pages looked warped from water damage. Half the writing barely readable. The ranger's name was Daniel Mercer. And near the end of the journal, the entries changed completely. June 11. Saw lights below the West Ridge again. Thought it was campers at first. June 14. Voices on the radio after midnight. Woman crying. June 18. Something keeps walking around the tower at night. Then the final entry. No date. They only come when the fog rolls in. After that, the journal stopped. No explanation. No final report. Just blank pages. I checked the employment records near the back of the cabinet. Daniel Mercer's name had been scratched out heavily in black ink. That bothered me more than it should have. Outside, clouds slowly gathered across the mountains again. By sunset, fog drifted through the trees below the tower exactly like the night before. And deep in my stomach, I already knew the lights would return. I tried keeping the windows covered after dark. Didn't help. You can still feel the forest around you in a fire-watch tower. The silence presses against the glass from every direction. Around 11, the radio crackled again. Static hissed softly. Then came breathing. Slow breathing. I grabbed the mic carefully. Walter. No answer. Only breathing. Then a weak male voice whispered through static. They're walking tonight. The transmission cut immediately afterward. I sat frozen beside the radio. My pulse pounded inside my ears. Then outside the tower window, orange light appeared between the trees. One lantern, then another, then 6 more. My stomach dropped instantly. They moved differently tonight. Closer. The lanterns drifted through the forest in slow, uneven patterns like people wandering without direction. But there were no visible bodies holding them. Just floating lights weaving between trees. The fog swallowed parts of them constantly. One would disappear for several seconds before glowing back into view somewhere else. I kept telling myself there had to be a normal explanation. Campers, hunters, locals, anything. But deep down, another thought had already rooted itself inside me. The lights weren't guiding people through the forest. They were searching for something. And tonight, they were getting closer to the tower. I backed away from the windows instinctively. The cabin suddenly felt too exposed. Glass on every side. No real walls. Nowhere to hide. The lanterns below continued moving uphill through the trees. Slowly, patiently. At one point, one of the lights stopped beneath a dead pine tree near the ridge. And for a brief second, I saw a person standing beside it. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like an old ranger jacket. The figure stood completely motionless, facing the tower. Then fog rolled across the ridge again and swallowed both the man and the lantern. The radio burst alive suddenly. Loud static exploded through the cabin. I jumped so hard the chair nearly tipped backward. A woman's voice whispered through the noise. He shouldn't have left us here. Another voice joined hers. Male. Weak. He watches from the trees. Then dozens of voices started speaking at once, whispers overlapping each other through the static. Crying, begging, praying. I couldn't understand most of it, but one phrase repeated over and over beneath the noise. Don't follow the lights. The radio finally died completely. Silence rushed back into the tower. Outside, the lanterns had stopped moving. All of them. Every light below the tower now faced upward toward me. Watching. The fog drifted softly around them like smoke. And then one by one, the lights began going out. Not all at once. Slowly. The farthest lantern vanished first. Then another. Then another. Darkness swallowed each one, until only a single light remained below the ridge. The last lantern, closest to the tower. It flickered gently beneath the trees for several seconds, then started moving uphill, toward me. My breathing became shallow immediately. I stepped away from the windows and grabbed the flashlight beside the bed. The lantern below kept climbing slowly through the woods. Closer, closer, and then the footsteps started underneath the tower again. Crunch, 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 circling slowly through gravel below me. Not hurried, calm, like somebody taking their time. The tower creaked softly beneath the weight of the wind. Or maybe something else. I moved carefully toward the trapdoor ladder and looked down through the narrow floor window again. At first I saw nothing, only darkness beneath the tower. Then the flashlight beam caught a face looking up at me. A man, pale skin, sunken eyes, wearing an old ranger uniform soaked dark with rainwater. His expression looked empty, not angry, not human either, and hanging loosely from his hand, a glowing orange lantern swayed gently in the dark. The man beneath the tower disappeared before sunrise. 1 second he stood there holding the lantern. The next, the fog rolled across the ground and swallowed him completely. I didn't hear footsteps leaving, didn't hear branches moving. Nothing, just silence beneath the tower again. I stayed awake the rest of the night, gripping the flashlight with both hands, while the radio hissed quietly beside me. Every few minutes, static crackled through the speaker like someone trying to speak from very far away. But no voices came after that. At dawn, I finally forced myself to look outside. The forest looked normal again. Soft sunlight spread through the trees. Wind moved calmly through the mountains. Birds chirped somewhere below the ridge. And beneath the tower, fresh footprints circled the gravel. One set, heavy boot prints this time. Not bare feet, ranger boots. I climbed down slowly after sunrise. The cold morning air felt good against my face, real, grounded. I kept telling myself there had to be another ranger up there messing with me somehow. Maybe locals, maybe hikers, maybe somebody using old frequencies to scare new firewatch workers. But then I found the lantern. It sat beneath the tower, exactly where the man had stood. Old rusted metal. Glass cracked along one side, cold to the touch, and carved into the bottom were initials. DM. My stomach tightened immediately. Daniel Mercer, the missing ranger from the old journal. I stared at those initials, while wind moved softly through the trees around me. The lantern looked ancient, like it had been sitting in the woods for years, but I'd seen someone holding it hours earlier. I carried it back up into the tower carefully. The smell bothered me first. Damp dirt, rotting leaves, and underneath that, something sour, like old clothes left underwater too long. I set the lantern beside the radio desk, and tried focusing on normal work for the rest of the afternoon. Didn't happen. My eyes kept drifting toward the woods, toward the lantern, toward the radio. By evening, clouds had gathered over the mountains again. Fog rolled between the trees in slow, pale waves. And deep down, I already knew night would bring the voices back. Around 9, I finally did something stupid. I turned the radio dial myself, slowly through each dead channel. Static crackled softly between frequencies. Most channels stayed empty. Then the dial reached channel 6. And suddenly, a man screamed. I jerked backwards so hard the chair nearly tipped over. The scream lasted only a second before dissolving into static. Then came heavy breathing. Fast breathing, like someone running. A terrified male voice whispered through the speaker. "He's in the trees." My pulse hammered instantly. The voice sounded painfully real. Not distorted. Not ghostly. Just human. I grabbed the microphone carefully. "Who is this?" Silence answered at first. Then the man whispered again. "I can see the tower." Static crackled around his voice. He said not to use the lights. A branch snapped loudly somewhere behind the speaker. The man gasped sharply. Then the transmission died. I stared at the radio with cold sweat spreading across my back. That's when I noticed something strange. The voice didn't sound old. No crackling age in it. No tape distortion. It sounded live. Like the man was speaking somewhere inside the forest right now. I radioed Walter immediately. "Walter, somebody's out there." Static. Then his tired voice answered. "What happened?" "I'm getting transmissions on channel 6. Silence followed. Long silence. Then Walter quietly asked, "What names are they using?" The question chilled me immediately. "What?" "The voices," he said. "Did they give names?" "No." Another pause. Then Walter sighed softly. "Do not answer them again." "What the hell is channel 6? Wind crackled through the radio for several seconds before he answered. "It's an old emergency frequency." "For who?" No response. "Walter." Finally he whispered, "People who never came back." Then the line went dead. I sat motionless beside the radio. Outside, darkness thickened around the tower windows. Fog erased most of the forest below. And somewhere out there, somebody had said they could see my tower. The radio clicked again around 10:30. A woman crying softly this time. Not loud. Quiet crying. Like she was trying not to be heard. I closed my eyes for a second before grabbing the mic. "Who are you?" Her breathing caught immediately. Then she whispered, "You answered." A strange feeling moved through my chest. Relief. Actual relief. Because for the first time the voice sounded aware, real, like I was finally speaking to another living person. "What happened to you?" I asked. The woman sniffled quietly. "We followed the lights." Static crackled around her voice. "I think we're still lost." My skin went cold. "Where are you?" "I don't know anymore." Something rustled near her microphone. "Branches, maybe." Then her voice dropped lower. "He walks between the trees at night." I glanced toward the windows instinctively. Darkness pressed against the glass on every side. The woman continued speaking softly. "You shouldn't let him see your face." "What are you talking about?" No answer came. Only static. Then suddenly, another voice interrupted hers. A male voice. Older. Angry. "She's dead." The words burst through the speaker, so suddenly I flinched hard. The woman started crying again. She's been dead for 11 years. My stomach dropped. The radio erupted into overlapping voices immediately afterward. Whispering, arguing, crying, some begging for help, others repeating strange phrases over and over. Don't leave the tower. Don't look below the trees. He hates the daylight. The noise became unbearable. I shut the radio off completely. Silence crashed over the cabin again. I sat there breathing hard, while wind rattled the tower windows. Then something tapped softly against the glass behind me. Tap, tap, tap. I turned slowly. Nothing stood outside the window. Only darkness and drifting fog. But near the bottom of the glass, a wet handprint slowly slid downward. I stumbled backward instantly. The print looked fresh. Water dripped from it onto the wooden floor beneath the window. And outside, an orange lantern glowed faintly between the trees, closer than before. I grabbed the flashlight and scanned the woods frantically. More lights appeared immediately. 3, 5, 7 lanterns drifting silently uphill through the fog. Not wandering anymore. Approaching. The tower creaked softly beneath me, and then the radio turned back on by itself. Static hissed through the speaker. A calm male voice spoke clearly. Tower 4. I froze. The voice sounded familiar. Too familiar. Then I realized why. It was my own voice. Not similar. Exact. Same tone. Same breathing. You should come outside now, my voice whispered through the radio. Fear hit me so hard my vision blurred for a second. The transmission continued. We found the trail. Outside, the lanterns stopped moving. All of them facing the tower now. My own voice crackled softly through the speaker again. You left us down here. Then came another sound beneath the transmission. Footsteps, crunching slowly through gravel below the tower. Circling, patient. The radio hissed softly before one final sentence came through. He knows your name already. Then every lantern below the trees went dark at the exact same moment. Complete blackness swallowed the mountain. And somewhere beneath the tower, someone started climbing the stairs. The footsteps stopped halfway up the tower stairs. I sat frozen beside the radio, barely breathing, staring at the trapdoor in the floor. The wood beneath me creaked softly. Not from wind, from weight. Something stood directly under the cabin listening to me breathe. Then the radio crackled one last time. A whisper. Don't let him inside. Silence followed. Complete silence. The footsteps never continued upward after that. No knocking. No voice. Nothing. Eventually, gray sunlight crept across the windows, and somehow that made everything feel worse. Because daylight should have made the fear disappear. Instead, the tower felt infected with it now. Every corner of the cabin reminded me of the voices from Channel 6. The wet handprint still stained the window. The lantern from Daniel Mercer rested cold beside the desk. And beneath the tower, fresh boot prints circled endlessly in the dirt. I decided to leave that morning. I didn't care about the money anymore, or the job, or how crazy any of this sounded. I packed my bag fast while trying not to look at the trees outside. The mountain felt different now. Watching, I radioed Walter 3 separate times before he finally answered. Static swallowed half his voice. You leaving? Yes. A long pause followed. Then Walter quietly asked, Did you hear Channel 6 again? Those people are real, Walter. Another pause. Then softly, They were. The radio hissed loudly. I gripped the microphone tighter. What does that mean? But Walter ignored the question. Drive south. Don't stop anywhere inside the forest. What's happening up here? Wind crackled through the speaker. Then Walter said something strange. The mountain keeps what it's given. Before I could ask anything else, the transmission cut dead. I left the tower 15 minutes later. Fog drifted thick through the trees again, even though the morning forecast had been clear. The dirt road down the ridge looked narrower somehow, like the forest had crept closer overnight. I drove slowly at first. My eyes kept searching between the trees without meaning to. Every shadow looked wrong now. Every patch of fog felt alive. About 20 minutes down the mountain, I noticed smoke rising through the woods west of the road. Thin gray smoke. Not wildfire smoke. Campfire smoke. I almost kept driving, but curiosity pulled at me harder than fear. Part of me still wanted answers. I parked beside the road and grabbed my flashlight before heading into the trees. The forest swallowed sound almost immediately. Pine needles softened my footsteps as I moved downhill toward the smoke. The deeper I walked, the colder the air became. Not natural cold. Heavy cold. The kind that settles into your chest. Then I saw the creek. Dark water winding silently between rocks and fallen trees. And beside it, the cabin, or what remained of it, half collapsed into the earth like the forest itself had tried burying it. The roof had caved inward years ago. Moss covered most of the walls. One side leaned dangerously toward the creek bank. Smoke drifted weakly from a rusted fire barrel nearby, which meant somebody had been there recently. I stood frozen between the trees, staring at the place. Something about it felt deeply wrong. Not haunted exactly. Familiar. Like I'd seen it before somewhere. Then I realized where. One of the old photographs inside the ranger station. A black and white picture pinned beneath missing person reports. A smiling family standing beside a hunting cabin near Blackwood Creek. The same cabin. My stomach tightened immediately. I remembered the newspaper clipping beneath the photo, too. Family of 4 found dead. Father missing. Case unsolved. I moved closer carefully. The creek water whispered softly nearby, while wind moved through the trees above me. The cabin door hung half open. Darkness waited inside. And scratched into the wood, beside the doorway were words almost hidden beneath moss. He still comes home. A branch snapped somewhere behind me. I spun around fast. Nothing there. Only endless trees. But suddenly, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had followed me from the tower. I stepped inside the cabin slowly. The smell hit first. Wet wood. Rot. Something sour underneath it all. Sunlight pushed weakly through holes in the collapsed roof, revealing broken furniture scattered beneath years of dust. Family photographs still hung crooked along one wall, most too damaged to recognize. Except one, a little girl in a yellow raincoat smiling beside the creek. I froze staring at it. Yellow raincoat. My mind flashed instantly to the little girl beside the bicycle from the road near the cabin weeks earlier. Same coat. Same dark eyes. My chest tightened. The floor creaked softly beneath me as I moved deeper inside. The fireplace still contained blackened firewood. Old dishes sat untouched on a table coated in dirt. It looked less abandoned than forgotten, like people had simply stopped existing there one day. Then I noticed the blood stains. Dark brown streaks soaked deep into the floorboards near the hallway. Old, but unmistakable. A strange pressure settled into the room suddenly. like the cabin itself remembered what happened there. I crouched near the stains carefully, and that's when I saw the marks in the wood. Scratches, dozens of them. Long, deep lines carved across the floorboards leading toward the back room, like someone had been dragged. My pulse quickened instantly. I followed the scratches slowly down the narrow hallway. The back bedroom door stood partly open. Inside, faded wallpaper peeled from the walls in long strips. A child's bed rested crooked against one corner, and beside it, an old radio sat on the floor, same model as the one inside the Firewatch tower. Dust coated most of it, but one small light blinked weakly green. Powered on. I stared at it in disbelief. That shouldn't have been possible. The cabin had no electricity. The radio crackled softly. Static filled the room. Then a little girl's voice whispered through it. He brought them here. Every muscle in my body locked instantly. The voice sounded calm, almost sleepy. I backed toward the doorway slowly. The radio crackled again. He keeps the lost ones. Outside, wind moved harder through the trees now. The cabin groaned softly around me. I should have left right then. Instead, I noticed another door near the bedroom closet, half hidden beneath collapsed wood. A cellar door, one side slightly open. Cold air drifted upward through the crack, carrying that same rotten smell from the tower lantern. My flashlight trembled slightly as I pulled the door wider. Wooden steps disappeared into darkness below, and from somewhere inside the cellar, I heard breathing. Slow breathing. Not animal breathing. Human. I stood there frozen for several seconds. Then the radio behind me hissed loudly again. This time, multiple voices whispered together. Don't go down there. Fear surged through me hard enough to make my hands numb. But underneath that fear, curiosity kept growing. Because deep down, I already knew the cellar connected everything somehow. The missing hikers, the voices, the lanterns, Daniel Mercer, all of it. I aimed the flashlight downward carefully. The beam revealed dirt walls and old shelves beneath the cabin. And at the bottom of the stairs, a chair faced the darkness. Someone sat in it, perfectly still, only the back of their head visible above the chair. Gray hair, thin shoulders. My mouth went dry instantly. The figure slowly tilted its head upward, and from the darkness below, Walter's voice whispered softly, "You weren't supposed to find this place." Walter's face looked wrong in the cellar light. Not dead, not alive either, just empty. His skin hung pale and loose beneath his gray beard, and his eyes reflected the flashlight strangely, almost silver inside the darkness. For a second, neither of us spoke. The weak green radio light blinked softly behind me upstairs, while cold air drifted through the cabin walls. Walter remained seated in the chair at the bottom of the stairs, watching me. Then he sighed quietly. "You should have left the mountain." My mouth felt dry. "What is this place?" Walter rubbed both hands together slowly like they hurt. "The place where people get lost. That doesn't explain anything." His eyes lifted toward me again. "You think I haven't tried?" The cellar smelled awful. Damp dirt and something rotten underneath it. I realized then that shelves lined the walls around him. Old canned food, lanterns, stacks of weathered journals. This wasn't just a hidden cellar. Someone had been living there. For years. Walter noticed me staring. "Snow's coming tonight," he muttered. "Roads'll close by morning." A heavy feeling settled into my chest immediately. You knew this would happen. Walter didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked toward the dirt wall behind him. That family died in this cabin 31 years ago. Wind groaned softly outside. The father killed his wife first, Walter continued quietly, then the children. His voice remained flat, like he'd repeated the story too many times. But they never found his body. I swallowed hard. The lanterns. Walter nodded faintly. He carried one. Silence filled the cellar again. The flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. You're saying the killer's still alive? Walter finally looked back at me. No, he whispered. That answer scared me more than if he'd said yes. Outside, snowflakes suddenly tapped against the broken cabin roof above us. The storm had arrived faster than expected. Walter noticed the sound too. He likes storms, he said softly. Something moved upstairs. A floorboard creaked slowly overhead. Both of us looked upward immediately. The sound came again. Heavy footsteps crossing the cabin floor. Not hiding. Walking calmly. My pulse quickened. We're not alone here, I whispered. Walter's expression didn't change. He knows you came down here. Another footstep overhead. Closer to the bedroom now. I suddenly realized something horrible. The footprints around the tower. The lanterns. The voices on Channel 6. Maybe none of it had been random. Maybe something had been leading me toward this cabin the entire time. Walter stood slowly from the chair. His joints cracked softly in the silence. You need to go back to the tower before dark. What about you? A strange sadness crossed his face then. I never really left. Before I could ask what that meant, the radio upstairs exploded with static. A woman screamed through it. Loud, desperate. The sound echoed violently through the cabin. Then came crashing noises upstairs. Furniture scraping hard across the floor. I stumbled backward instinctively. Walter grabbed my arm tightly. His hand felt freezing cold. Don't look at him if you see him. Fear surged through me instantly. What? The old ranger stared directly into my eyes. He wears other faces now. Another loud crash shook dust from the ceiling above us. Then silence. Complete silence. Walter released my arm slowly. You need to leave. For the first time since arriving in Blackwood, I listened. We climbed the cellar stairs quickly. The cabin above looked darker now beneath the storm clouds. Snow blew softly through holes in the collapsed roof. And the bedroom radio was gone. The floor where it had rested sat empty. My stomach tightened immediately. Walter noticed it too. He moved it. The words barely left his mouth before we heard breathing from the hallway. Slow breathing. Not hidden. The sound of someone standing just beyond the doorway. I raised the flashlight instinctively. The beam shook across peeling wallpaper and darkness beyond the hall. Nothing there. But the breathing continued. Closer now. Walter stepped backward carefully. His face had gone pale. He found us. Then the hallway floor creaked once. A tall shape crossed the doorway. Too fast to see clearly. But I caught pieces of it. Dark coat. Long arms. And a lantern swinging gently beside one leg. I ran. Pure instinct. Walter shouted something behind me, but I barely heard him over the panic roaring inside my head. I burst out of the cabin into falling snow. Cold wind slammed into my face immediately. The forest looked completely different now. White snow swirling through endless dark trees. The creek barely visible beneath growing frost. I sprinted uphill toward the road as fast as I could. Branches clawed against my jacket while my boots slipped across wet ground. Behind me, the lantern light moved between the trees, following, not rushing, just keeping pace. I reached the Subaru gasping for breath. Snow already covered part of the windshield. My shaking hands fumbled the keys badly before finally unlocking the door. I climbed inside and slammed it shut. The forest outside vanished behind heavy snowfall almost instantly. I turned the ignition. Nothing. The engine clicked weakly. Again. Nothing. Panic surged harder through my chest. No, no, no. I tried again. Dead. The cold had killed the battery. Outside, orange light drifted slowly between the trees. Closer now. I grabbed the radio from the passenger seat and switched it on desperately. Static filled the car. Then Walter's voice crackled through weakly. Don't let him reach the road. What are you talking about? Heavy static swallowed half the transmission. He can't leave the mountain alone. Fear crawled slowly into my stomach. What does that mean? Walter's breathing crackled loudly through the speaker. Then he whispered something that changed everything. He needs somebody to take his place. The radio died completely afterward. Snow hammered harder against the car windows. Outside, the lantern stopped near the tree line. Watching the vehicle, I could barely make out the figure holding it now. Tall, still, patient. Then another lantern appeared deeper in the woods. And another. And another. Dozens of orange lights glowed faintly through the storm. Surrounding the road, the missing people, the hikers, the voices from Channel 6. I finally understood what Blackwood Forest really was. Not a haunted place. A trap. Something on that mountain collected people. And whatever wore the lantern never hunted alone. My breathing fogged the windshield while panic clawed through my chest. Then movement appeared beside the car suddenly. I turned fast. A little girl stood outside the passenger window. Yellow raincoat. Dark wet hair hanging across her face. The same girl from the photograph. From the roadside bicycle. Snow landed silently on her hood while she stared inside at me. Not angry. Not threatening. Just sad. Slowly, she lifted one small hand and pointed toward the backseat. Cold terror flooded my body. I turned slowly and froze. Someone sat behind me. A man in an old ranger uniform, soaked dark with melted snow. Daniel Mercer. His pale face reflected faintly in the mirror. Eyes hollow, skin gray, and resting across his lap was the missing radio from the cabin. Static crackled softly through it. Then my own voice whispered from the speaker. You stayed too long. Daniel smiled slightly. Not cruelly. Almost sympathetically. Outside, snow swallowed the mountain road completely. And somewhere deep in the forest below Blackwood, a new lantern flickered to life. The motel sign flickered in the storm like it was trying to warn me. Vacancy blinked, then half of the letters died, then came back wrong. Via CNCY. Something about that missing A made my stomach tighten before I even parked. The rain was coming down hard on Highway 16. So hard the road looked like it was melting into black water. My truck's engine had started knocking 30 miles back. And now I was stuck in the middle of nowhere with nothing but this old motel sitting under dead trees. No cars in the lot. No lights in the nearby town. Just wind, and that broken neon sign shaking like it was breathing. I remember sitting there for a second, not moving, because something felt off. Not dangerous in a loud way. More like the place was already expecting me. I turned off the engine and stepped out. Cold rain hit my face instantly, sharp enough to wake me up fully. The motel looked older up close, paint peeling, windows dark, a row of rooms stretching into the storm like they were never meant to be used again. Behind it, I could see the logging town, or what was left of it. Collapsed roofs, broken smokestacks, empty roads swallowed by weeds. No lights, no movement, like it had been erased. I walked to the office slowly. Each step on the gravel sounded too loud in the storm. The office door had a bell that didn't ring when I opened it. Just a soft click. Inside, the air was warm but stale, like it hadn't changed in years. A woman sat behind the counter, middle-aged, tired eyes. She didn't look up right away, just kept writing something in a ledger book with slow, careful strokes. "Room?" she asked without emotion. "Yeah," I said, "just for the night my truck broke down." That got her attention. She stopped writing, looked at me for a second longer than normal, then nodded like she already knew I was coming. "Room 6, she said. Something in her voice made me uneasy. Not fear, more like resignation. I took the key and noticed it was old metal, heavy, number scratched unevenly into it. I almost asked about the town outside, but she spoke first. "Storm will last till morning. Is there a mechanic nearby?" She finally looked at me fully then, and shook her head slowly. "No one comes up Highway 16 anymore." That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just silence. I left the office feeling heavier than when I entered. The motel hallway stretched long and dim, lit by flickering yellow bulbs that buzzed like trapped insects. Every step I took echoed too clearly. Room 6 was near the end. Of course it was. The door creaked when I opened it. Inside smelled like old wood and damp sheets. The kind of smell that doesn't belong in a room that's supposed to be ready. The bed was already made. That was the first strange thing. I hadn't seen anyone come in here. I set my bag down slowly, listening to the rain hit the window. Then I noticed the mirror. It was slightly angled toward the bed, like someone wanted to watch whoever slept here. I told myself it was just old motel design, but I still moved the mirror a little, just slightly. That's when I saw something scratched into the back of it. Not from this side, from behind the glass. 3 words: "Don't stay here." My stomach dropped. I stepped back immediately, looked around the room again. Now everything felt different. The closet door wasn't fully closed anymore. The curtain moved slightly, even though the window was shut. And the air, it felt like someone had just left. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course. I sat on the bed anyway, trying to convince myself it was just an abandoned place messing with my head. Old towns do that. Old buildings do that. But then I heard something outside. A truck engine. For a moment, relief hit me. Someone else. Maybe another driver. Maybe help. I went to the window fast. Looked down at the parking lot. Nothing. Empty gravel. Rain. Wind. No vehicle. But the engine noise was still there. Idling. Somewhere close. I leaned closer to the glass. And that's when I realized something worse. The sound wasn't outside. It was coming from inside the motel. Beneath me. From the floor below. I stepped back slowly, heart already picking up. Then the hallway light outside my room flickered once, twice, then stayed on. But now it looked dimmer, like the motel was losing power slowly. I opened the door slightly. The hallway was empty. Too empty. No sound of rain anymore. Just that low engine noise continuing under everything. I walked toward room 5. The door was slightly open. That alone made me stop. Because I remembered something. When I walked in earlier, all doors were closed. I pushed it gently. It opened fully. Room 5 was identical to mine. Same bed. Same mirror. Same smell. But there was a suitcase on the bed. Old leather. Dusty. Not mine. I stepped inside carefully. The engine noise got louder here. Under the floor. Right beneath my feet. I crouched down. Pressed my ear to the ground. And I swear, I heard breathing. Slow. Heavy. Like someone sleeping under the motel. I stood up too fast. Hit my head slightly on the mirror. And froze. Because the reflection didn't match me. For half a second, there was someone standing behind me. In the mirror. Tall shape. Dark coat. Just watching. I spun around instantly. Nothing. Empty room. But the suitcase on the bed was now open. I didn't hear it open. Didn't see it move. It was just open. Inside it was a stack of old papers. I picked them up with shaking hands. Reports. Missing person files. Highway 16 incidents. Names I didn't recognize. Dates going back decades. And at the bottom of every page, one repeated line. Last seen AT motel off Highway 16. My throat went dry. Then I saw something worse. A photo slipped out from the papers. Black and white. Old. It showed the motel. But not like this. It was crowded. Cars parked outside. People standing in front. And in the center of the image, a mechanic standing beside a broken truck, covered in rain, holding a motel key. My hands started shaking harder, because I recognized the truck. It was mine. Same dent on the door. Same broken headlight. Same rust pattern. But the photo looked decades old. Behind the mechanic in the picture, the motel sign was clearly visible. And it read something different. Rooms always available. I dropped the photo immediately. The engine noise below suddenly stopped. Complete silence. That silence felt worse than sound. I backed out of room 5 slowly. And that's when I saw it. Every room door in the hallway was now slightly open. Just a few inches. All of them. Room 2. Room 3. Room 4. Room 7. Every single one. I hadn't touched them. I started walking toward the stairs. Slowly. Careful not to run. Because something inside me knew running would make it worse. Halfway down the hallway, the motel lights flickered again. And a voice came from behind room 6. My room. Soft. Low. Calling my name. I stopped. Completely still. The voice called again. Closer this time. Like it was inside the walls. I turned slowly. Room 6 door was open now. And standing inside was me. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. Me. Same clothes. Same face. But eyes wrong. Empty in a way I can't explain. It smiled slightly. And said something I'll never forget. You always check in when it rains. The hallway lights went out instantly after that. Total darkness. And somewhere deep under the motel, the engine started again. The lights died the moment I saw myself smiling in room 6. Not flickering. Not fading, just gone. And in that instant darkness, I felt something worse than fear settle into the motel. Awareness, like the building had finally opened its eyes. The voice that said, "You always check in when it rains," still echoed in my head. But now there was only silence. No engine beneath the floor. No hallway buzz. No wind. Just me, standing in blackness, so deep it felt like it had waked. I didn't move for a while. I didn't even breathe properly, because I could feel something inside the motel shifting. Like it had noticed I understood too much. Slowly, I backed away from room 6. One step, then another. My hand slid along the wall, searching for anything solid, anything normal. But the wall felt wrong. Slightly damp, slightly warm, like it wasn't a wall at all. I found the stair railing and held it tightly. My fingers were shaking so much I could barely grip it. And that's when I heard it again. Not the engine this time. A soft sound. A door closing somewhere below. Then footsteps. Slow, measured, moving through the ground floor of the motel. Not rushing, not searching, just walking like whoever it was already knew where everything was. I stayed frozen, listening. The footsteps stopped, then silence again. But this silence felt different, focused, like it was waiting for me to do something. I took one careful step down the stairs, then another. The darkness didn't change as I moved. It stayed thick, almost complete, but I could feel space around me. Hallway, lobby, office. The motel was still there, just hidden inside the dark. Then a faint glow appeared ahead. Not light from a bulb, something warmer, like candlelight. It came from the far end of the hallway. Room 8. I didn't know why I knew that, but I did. The number felt important. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. The door was slightly open, just like the others before. But this one felt different, like it had always been open, waiting. And from inside came a sound I hadn't heard since arriving. A voice humming, soft, slow, almost comforting, but wrong in a way I couldn't explain. I stopped outside the door. My chest felt tight now. I should have left. I know that. But something about that humming pulled at me, like my thoughts weren't fully mine anymore. I pushed the door open. Room 8 looked normal at first. Too normal. Bed neatly made. Curtains still moving slightly like a breeze was inside the sealed room. A lamp on the table flickering with that warm glow. And a chair beside the window, facing inward. Not outside. Inside the room. And in that chair sat a woman. Still, perfectly still. She didn't look at me immediately. She kept humming. Same soft tone. Same rhythm. Like she didn't care I was there. My throat felt dry. "Hello," I said quietly. The humming stopped instantly. That silence hit harder than sound. The woman turned her head slowly. And for a moment, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. She looked normal. Too normal again. Dark hair, pale face, tired eyes. But there was something missing in her expression. Not emotion. Direction. Like she wasn't fully focused on reality. She studied me for a long time. Then finally spoke. "You're late." My stomach tightened. Late for what? She tilted her head slightly, like my question was strange. "For your room." I took a small step back. I didn't book anything. I just came here because of my truck. She interrupted softly. Everyone says that. That sentence didn't feel like words. It felt like memory, something repeated too many times. I looked around the room again. The lamp flickered once, and I noticed something I didn't see before. The walls were covered in small markings, not scratches like the cabin. These were words, names, hundreds of them, all written faintly into the wallpaper, like they had been pressed from the inside. I moved closer without thinking. My eyes caught one name. Mine, not written recently, faded slightly like it had been there for a long time. My breath stopped completely. No, I whispered. The woman finally stood up. Slow movement. Careful. Like she had all the time in the world. You're trying to remember, she said. What is this place? I asked louder now. She walked toward me slowly. Not threatening, just certain. This is where people wait when they don't leave on time. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I backed toward the hallway. But the moment I did, I noticed something outside the room. The hallway wasn't dark anymore. It was lit. Dim, warm light. And every door was closed now. Except room 8. Only room 8 stayed open. Like everything else had reset. The woman stopped near the doorway. And then she said something that made my skin go cold. You've been here longer than you think. I shook my head quickly. No, I just arrived tonight. She didn't argue. She just looked at me like I was wrong in a quiet way. Then she pointed gently at my wrist. I looked down and froze. There was a motel key in my hand. Room 8. Same metal. Same scratched number. But I never took it. I dropped it instantly like it burned me. It hit the floor with a soft metallic sound. The woman sighed softly. Room 6 always forgets. My chest tightened hard. What does that mean? She turned back toward the chair and sat down again. Like the conversation was already finished. Room 6, she said slowly, is where you check in first. My mind felt like it was breaking apart. I backed into the hallway again. The moment I stepped out, the hallway changed. The flickering darkness was gone. Now it looked clean, functional, like a normal motel again. But I knew it was, because the silence was still wrong. Too controlled. I walked fast now, toward the stairs. But every step I took, the hallway seemed slightly longer, like it was adjusting itself. Then I heard it, soft humming again. Behind me. Room 8. I turned once. The door was closed now, but light leaked through the bottom. Warm. Alive. I ran. Down the stairs. Straight to the office. The lobby looked different too. Less broken. Less abandoned. But the woman at the counter was still there. Same posture. Same writing. She didn't look up when I entered. I slammed my hands on the counter. What is happening here? She finally stopped writing, slowly looked up, and for the first time, she looked tired in a different way, like she had seen too many versions of this moment. You saw room 8, she said. Yes. She nodded like that confirmed something she already knew. Then she said something I didn't expect. She remembers you better than you do. My heart dropped. What are you talking about? The woman closed the ledger book. And for a second, the entire motel felt like it held its breath with her. People don't arrive here, she said quietly. They return. Outside, wind picked up again. Rain started falling, even though I didn't remember it stopping. The motel sign flickered through the window. Vacancy. Then one letter changed. Welcome. My breathing turned shallow. And somewhere upstairs, room 8 door opened again. Slowly, quietly, like it knew I was already coming back. The ice machine was still running, even after everything else stopped. Even after the lights changed. Even after the sign outside turned into welcome. That steady mechanical hum kept pulling me back into reality, like nothing in this place wanted to fully let go of me. I stood in the motel lobby, staring at the stairs leading down behind the office counter. The woman wasn't there anymore. Just the ledger book left open. A single line written across the page. Hideaways now. My throat tightened instantly, because I didn't know who he was. But I had a feeling I was about to find out. The ice machine clicked loudly again. Closer this time, like something inside it shifted. I turned toward it slowly. It sat in a narrow hallway beside the vending machines, glowing faint blue in the dark. Normal. Too normal. That's what made it worse, because nothing else in this motel was normal anymore. I walked closer. Every step felt heavier, like the floor was slightly sinking under me. The machine kept dropping ice cubes into a metal tray. Clink, clink, clink. But the rhythm wasn't random. It felt like it was counting. I stopped right in front of it. And for a moment, everything else went silent. Even the rain outside. Just that ice sound. Then I noticed something strange. The ice cubes weren't cubes. They were too clear, too shaped. I leaned closer. My breath fogged the glass, and I froze. Inside the ice machine, there were things frozen in the ice. Not just shapes, objects, a cracked motel key, a broken flashlight, a torn piece of cloth, and something that looked like a human tooth. My stomach twisted hard. I stepped back immediately, but the machine made a new sound, a low mechanical shift. Then the bottom panel clicked open slightly, just enough, like it was inviting me. I shouldn't have gone. I know that now, but something in me needed answers more than safety. I knelt down slowly, pulled the panel open. Cold air rushed out instantly. Not normal cold, deep cold, the kind that feels like it's been trapped underground for years. And there it was, a narrow metal hatch beneath the ice machine, half hidden, bolted unevenly into the floor. I stared at it for a long moment, because I knew what I was looking at. This wasn't part of a motel. This was something added later, something hidden, something meant to stay buried. A faint sound came from below, not the ice machine this time. A voice, so quiet I almost missed it. Don't open it. I froze, looked around. No one there. The hallway behind me was empty. But the voice came again. Closer. Please don't open it. My hands were shaking now, because I recognized that voice. It was mine, but not mine from now. Mine from somewhere else. I swallowed hard and reached for the hatch anyway. The bolt was rusted. It resisted at first, then gave way with a sharp metallic snap. The sound echoed through the entire motel. Too loud, too final. I lifted the hatch slowly. Cold air exploded upward instantly. And with it, a smell. Rot, wet metal, and something like burned wood. I shined my phone flashlight down. The beam disappeared quickly into darkness. But there was a ladder. Old metal rungs going straight down into a tunnel. And carved into the wall beside it were marks. Dozens of them. Scratch marks. Names. Same pattern as room 8. Same handwriting. Same pressure. People had been down here. A lot of them. My chest tightened. Then I heard it again. The ice machine behind me started dropping ice faster. Clink, 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 clink. Like it was excited. Like it knew I was going down. I took the first step onto the ladder. Cold metal burned my hand instantly. Every instinct told me to go back. But the tunnel below felt like the only place that might finally explain everything. So I went down, step by step. The motel above disappeared slowly. The air changed fast, from stale hotel smell to earth, wet dirt, old concrete, then something worse. Human smell, the kind you never forget. The ladder ended in a narrow tunnel. Bare concrete walls. Dim emergency, lights flickering weakly every few meters. And pipes running overhead like veins through a dead body. I stood still for a moment, listening. Drip, drip, drip. Water somewhere ahead. But also something else. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Not running. Just moving through the tunnel like they had nowhere else to go. I followed the sound carefully. Each step echoed too loudly. The tunnel curved slightly downward. And then I saw it. A metal door at the end. Wide open. Light spilling out from inside. Not warm light. Cold fluorescent light. Like a hospital that forgot how to feel human. I approached slowly. And inside the room beyond the door. I stopped breathing completely. Because it wasn't a basement. It was a storage room. But not for supplies. For people. Rows of old lacquers lined the walls. Some open. Some sealed shut. Some scratched from the inside. And in the center of the room, a desk covered in papers, files, photographs, all pinned and stacked in chaotic layers. Missing persons, Highway 16 reports, motel registrations, all of them connected, all of them ending here. My hands moved before my thoughts did. I picked up one file. My name was on it, but the date was 10 years ago. I dropped it instantly. My heart started beating too fast. No, this isn't possible. Then I noticed something worse. There were recordings stacked beside the files. Old cassette tapes, all labeled the same way. Room RCRDNGS, Highway 16. My breathing turned shallow. I picked one up. My fingers felt numb. The tape was already inside a player sitting on the desk. Like someone had been listening right before I arrived. I pressed play. Static filled the room instantly. Then a voice. My voice. But older. Tired. Broken. If you're hearing this, you've already gone down too far. My blood ran cold. The recording continued. The motel is not a place, it's a cycle. I backed away slightly. The voice on the tape paused, then added something worse. And you always try to escape through the basement. I froze, because I hadn't told anyone that. The voice continued. You'll find what they left behind, the ones who didn't make it out of room 8. The tape hissed louder. Then another voice joined. The woman from room 8. Calm. Soft. You always come back to me. My hands started shaking violently now. The tapes weren't just recordings. They were conversations. Between versions of me. Between people I hadn't met yet. I turned around fast. The hallway behind me had changed. The tunnel wasn't empty anymore. It was full of doors, dozens of them, all motel doors, all numbered. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3. They stretched endlessly into darkness, like the basement had turned into the motel itself. Then one door opened slowly. Room 8. Light spilled out. Warm again. Inviting again. And from inside came the humming. Soft. Familiar. The same woman's voice. I stepped back immediately. But the tunnel behind me was gone now. Only doors. Only rooms. I was trapped between them. The humming grew louder. Closer. Then a figure stepped into the doorway of room 8. Not fully visible. Just silhouette. But I knew instantly it was her. The woman from upstairs. She tilted her head slightly and said something gently. You're almost done remembering. My chest tightened painfully. What is this place? I asked again. She smiled faintly. You already know. And that's when the ice machine sound echoed through the tunnel again. Clink, clink, clink. Like something above had started falling again. But this time, not ice. Something heavier. We shouldn't have gone back to that lake. That's the first thing that comes to my mind every time I try to remember it clearly. Because the memory never stays clean. It always starts peaceful, then slowly turns wrong. Like something inside it is rewriting itself while I watch. We were 4 that night. Me, Armin, Saad, and Bilal. Childhood friends who promised we'd take one last camping trip before life split us in different directions. College, jobs, marriage plans. We said it would be simple. One night under the stars near an old mountain, like no one visited anymore. We even laughed about it. Called it our last free night. But I remember the road there now, and I realized something. The forest was already waiting for us. The drive took longer than it should have. The GPS kept losing signal, even though we were still on the main route. And the deeper we went into the mountains, the quieter the world became. Not normal quiet. Heavy quiet. Like sound itself was being swallowed. Armin was the one driving. He joked at first. Maybe the lake got deleted from the map, he said. We laughed. But no one really laughed back the same way after a while. Because the trees started changing. Thicker. Older, closer to the road. And then the first strange thing happened. We passed a sign. A wooden one. Half broken. It didn't say anything useful. Just, do not stay after sunset. Bilal leaned forward from the back seat. That's dramatic, he said. But I remember how he said it. Not joking. Just uncomfortable. We kept driving anyway, because people always ignore warnings that don't feel real yet. The road ended just after sunset. Not slowly, not gradually. It just stopped. Like the mountain decided we weren't allowed to go further by car. We parked at the edge of the forest trail and grabbed our bags. The air outside was colder than expected. Too cold for early summer. The kind of cold that feels like it belongs to something older than weather. The trail to the lake was narrow, overgrown, and silent in a way that made our footsteps feel too loud. Saad was the first to notice something odd. No insects, he said. We all stopped for a moment. He was right. No crickets, no birds, no wind through the leaves. Just us moving through trees that didn't seem to breathe. Still, we kept going. Because lakes like this are supposed to be remote. Supposed to feel untouched. But this didn't feel untouched. It felt abandoned. Like everything had left at once. The lake appeared suddenly. No warning, no gradual reveal. One moment there were trees, the next open water. Dark, still, perfectly still. Not even ripples, just a black mirror stretched between mountains. And in that moment, none of us spoke, because we all felt it. Something about the lake was wrong. Not visually, emotionally. Like standing near, it made your thoughts quieter, heavier, slower. We set up camp a little away from the shore. Not too close. None of us said why. We just agreed silently. As the fire started, things felt almost normal again. Almost. Armin tried to lighten the mood, told old school stories, made fun of how serious we were acting. But even he kept looking toward the lake between sentences, like he expected it to move. Night came quickly in the mountains, faster than it should have, and with it the temperature dropped sharply. That's when we first heard it. A sound from the water. Not a splash, not movement, more like something breathing beneath the surface. Bill stood up immediately. "What was that?" he asked. No one answered, because we didn't know. The lake was still perfectly calm, but now it felt less like water, more like something watching us through glass. Saad tried to joke again. Probably fish, but his voice didn't sound convinced. We stayed around the fire longer than we planned. None of us wanted to be the first to suggest sleeping, because sleep felt like surrender in that place. At some point, Armin pointed toward the trees behind us. "Did you guys see that?" We turned. Nothing there. Just forest. But the fire flickered strangely when we looked back, like something had passed between us and the wind. I remember thinking then, this is just fear. Nothing else. But fear has a way of growing quietly when you don't feed it logic. And that night, logic wasn't helping. Around midnight, the lake changed again. We didn't see it at first. We heard it. A soft cracking sound, like ice breaking. But the lake wasn't frozen. Still, we all stood up at the same time and looked. The surface of the water was no longer still. It was moving, slowly, in circles, like something beneath it was turning over in its sleep. Then Armin whispered something I'll never forget. "Why does it feel like it's looking back at us?" That was the moment everything stopped being casual. We didn't sleep. None of us did. We stayed near the fire until it burned low. And when the wood finally turned to glowing ash, that's when we noticed the first missing thing. Our backpacks were slightly closer to the lake than before. No one remembered moving them. Saad blamed wind, but there was no wind. Not even a breeze. We checked everything. Nothing was taken. But the placement was wrong. Subtly wrong. Like someone had rearranged our camp while we weren't paying attention. That night, we decided to take turns staying awake. I was supposed to go second. Armin first. Bilal after me. Saad last. I remember lying down near the dying fire, listening to Armin breathing while he kept watch. The lake was silent again. Too silent. And I remember thinking I might be overreacting. Maybe we were just tired. Maybe the isolation was messing with us. That thought helped me drift. Just a little. Not fully asleep. Just that strange half state where reality feels thin. That's when I heard Armin's voice. Soft. Confused. "Guys, wake up." I opened my eyes slowly. The fire was almost gone. Only embers now. And Armin was standing near the lake. Not looking at us. Looking into the water. Saad sat up too. "What is it?" he asked. Armin didn't answer immediately. Then he said something that still echoes in my head. "There are footprints in the water." We stood up instantly, walked closer, and I remember the exact moment my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. Because he was right. There were footprints, not on the shore, not in the mud, inside the lake, as if someone was walking across the surface from beneath it. Slow steps, one after another, coming toward us. Billo backed away first. "I don't like this," he said. None of us did, but none of us ran either, because something about the lake made fear feel delayed, like your body reacted slower than your mind. The footprints stopped halfway between the shore and the deepest part of the lake, and then the water went still again, completely, as if nothing had ever happened. Armin laughed nervously. "That's not possible." But his voice shook. "We didn't stay until morning. We packed fast. Too fast. No one argued. No one joked. We just wanted distance." The forest felt different on the way back. Heavier, like it remembered us, and didn't want us leaving. Halfway up the trail, I noticed something strange. There were no birds again, no insects, but now there were footprints behind us. Vorsets, walking exactly in sync with ours. Except they were slightly deeper, like whoever was following us weighed more. Much more. I told the others to move faster. No explanation. They didn't ask why. They already felt it too. We reached the road just as dawn started to break. The forest behind us looked normal again. Almost. But before we got in the car, I turned back one last time. And I saw it. At the edge of the trees near the lake path. 4 figures standing perfectly still. Watching. Not moving. Not hiding. Just waiting. And in that moment, I realized something I still don't understand fully. We didn't leave that lake alone. Something left with us. We shouldn't have seen smoke that night. That's the part that still doesn't make sense in my head. Because the cabin across the water was supposed to be empty. Completely empty. Armin was the first to notice it. We were sitting near the dying fire again, none of us speaking much after what we saw at the lake's edge. The forest around us felt quieter than before, like it was listening instead of existing. Then Armin slowly lifted his hand. "Look." We all turned. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the lake. Dark again. Still again. Like nothing had ever happened the night before. But then I saw it. Far across the water. A thin line of smoke rising into the sky. Slow. Steady. Almost peaceful. Except nothing about this place was supposed to be peaceful anymore. Billo stood up first. "That's impossible," he said immediately. Saad frowned, "Maybe campers." But even as he said it, his voice didn't believe it. Because there were no trails on that side of the lake. No roads. No access. Just cliffs and dead forest. Armin squinted. That old cabin. I felt something tighten in my chest the moment he said it. Because I remembered the stories. Locals in the nearest village had warned us. There was an old cabin across the lake. Burned partially years ago. Abandoned. No one went there anymore. Not even hunters. They said it wasn't safe. But they never said why. Just that it should stay empty. Always empty. And yet, smoke was rising from it now. Slowly curling into the sky like it had every right to be there. We didn't speak for a moment, just stared. The fire beside us cracked softly, and suddenly it felt too small, too weak, like it didn't belong in the same world as that smoke. Saad finally broke the silence. We're not going over there. No one argued, but no one relaxed either, because curiosity has a way of growing in silence. It doesn't ask permission. It just spreads. The smoke continued steadily, not rushing, not fading. Like whoever was there didn't care if we were watching. That's what bothered me the most. It felt intentional. Armin stood up. I'm just going to check the boat. Billo looked at him like he'd lost his mind. There is no boat. But Armin was already walking. And we followed, because none of us wanted to be left alone with our thoughts. The shore was darker than before. The lake felt deeper at the edges now, like it had expanded while we weren't looking. And there it was, a small wooden boat tied loosely to a broken post. None of us remembered it being there earlier. None of us said that out loud. Armin pulled it closer. The rope felt old, too old, but still strong, still usable. Saad shook his head. This wasn't here yesterday. Armin ignored him. That was the first mistake. We climbed in anyway. 4 of us. Too many for something that small. The boat tilted slightly as we pushed off. And the moment it touched the water, the lake changed again. Not visibly, but emotionally, like something under it noticed us crossing. The rowing was slow, silent except for water moving against wood. And with every stroke, the cabin across the lake became clearer. At first, it looked like a shadow between trees, then a shape, then a structure, and finally, a cabin. Old, broken, half-burned, just like the story said. But the smoke was still rising from its chimney. Fresh, alive. That's when I realized something. The smoke didn't match the cabin. It was too clean, too new, like it belonged to a house that had never burned at all. We stopped speaking completely. Even Armin, even him. The only sound was water, and the soft creaking of wood beneath us. The closer we got, the more wrong it felt. The cabin wasn't just abandoned. It felt paused, like someone had left it mid-moment. A chair outside still facing the water. A broken window hanging slightly open. A door that looked like it had been touched recently. Not weathered, touched. We reached the shore on the other side without speaking. The boat bumped softly against rocks. No one moved at first. We just stared at the cabin. Saad finally whispered, "We shouldn't be here." And for once, nobody disagreed. But Armin stepped out anyway. That's when everything started to feel irreversible. The ground near the cabin was soft. Too soft. Like it had been walked on recently. Fresh footprints led from the water to the door. Barely visible. But there. We followed them without deciding to. That's the worst part. No one decided anything anymore. We just moved. The cabin door was slightly open. And inside, it smelled like smoke. Fresh smoke. Not old ash. Not decay. Recent fire. Armin pushed the door wider. The sound it made was too clean. Like it had been oiled. Inside, everything looked wrong in a quiet way. Furniture intact. Bed made. Table clean. No dust. No signs of abandonment at all. It looked like someone lived here. Right now. But that wasn't possible. Saad stepped back slightly. This is not the cabin people talk about. Bill nodded quickly. Yeah, this is new. But I couldn't agree, because I noticed something on the wall. Photos, old ones, hanging neatly. 4 people standing by the lake, smiling. A camping trip. The same lake. The same forest. My stomach dropped instantly, because I recognized the faces. Ours, but older. Too old. Like the pictures were taken years in the future. Armin noticed me staring. What is it? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the fire in the fireplace suddenly crackled, even though no one had touched it. We all turned instantly, and that's when we saw it. The ashes weren't old. They were fresh, still glowing slightly. Someone had been here, very recently. Sawed back toward the door. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. But the door wasn't open anymore. It was closed, quietly, without sound. We hadn't seen it move. We didn't hear it shut. It was just closed. Armin walked toward it slowly, pulled the handle. Locked. He tried again. Harder. Still locked. Silence filled the cabin instantly. The fire in the fireplace dimmed slightly, like it was reacting, like it was aware of us now. Then we heard it. A creak upstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone stepping on wood that knew it would be stepped on. We all looked up at the same time. No one spoke. The ceiling creaked again. Closer this time. Then a voice. Soft. Calm. From above. You finally came back. My skin went cold instantly. Because that voice sounded like mine. But I hadn't spoken. None of us had. Armin whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just another step above us. Slow. Patient. Saad grabbed my arm tightly. We need to leave now. But the stairs were already creaking. Something was coming down. And the smoke from the chimney outside stopped. Completely. Like the cabin had finished what it was doing. And didn't need it anymore. Something was wrong before we even realized someone was gone. That's what I keep thinking now. Because the forest didn't feel the same after we heard that voice in the cabin. We got out of there fast. Too fast. I don't even remember deciding to run. One moment we were inside that cabin, staring at the stairs, listening to something come down slowly. And the next moment we were outside, breathing like we had just escaped drowning. But the problem is, nothing chased us. Nothing followed. That should have been the first warning. We didn't talk much after that. We just crossed back over the lake in silence, like the water itself might change its mind and pull us under. When we reached our campsite again, the fire was still there. Small, weak, like it had been waiting for us to return. Saad was the first to break. We leave in the morning, he said. No one argued. Not even Armin this time. But I noticed something strange. We were 4 when we left. We were still 4 when we came back. And yet, it felt like someone was already missing. I didn't say that out loud. Neither did anyone else. We sat around the fire, but no one really sat together anymore. There were gaps between us now. Invisible gaps. Like something had already divided us. The forest around us felt closer than before. Not physically, but like it was leaning in. Listening. Waiting for a mistake. At some point I fell asleep. I don't remember when. Only that the fire was still burning low, and the others were still there. Or at least I thought they were. Because when I woke up, Armin was gone. At first, I didn't understand it. The fire had almost died. Ash instead of flame. Cold air biting my face. And 3 shadows instead of 4. I sat up slowly. My heart wasn't even racing yet. Just confused. Like my mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Armin, I called softly. No answer. Sod stirred beside me. What? Armin not here. That's when everything changed. Sod stood up instantly. Maybe he went to the lake. But even as he said it, his voice didn't believe it. Billow was already scanning the trees. It's still dark. Why would he go anywhere alone? That question hung in the air. Why would he? We checked the campsite first. Everything was still there. His bag, his jacket, even his phone lying near the fire ring. No signs of struggle. No sound. No footsteps. Just absence. Clean and complete. That was the worst part. There was no violence. No warning. Just removal. Like he had been taken out of the scene of a story, without anyone noticing the edit. Sod kept packing. This doesn't make sense. We were all here. Billow shook his head. No, we were asleep. That sentence hit differently. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure how long I had been asleep. Minutes, hours, or longer. The forest didn't answer. It never does. We searched near the lake first, calling his name into the trees, each echo coming back weaker than the last, like even sound was being drained here. At one point I stopped walking, because I saw something near the shore. Footprints, fresh, leading away from our camp. One set, only one. Sod noticed them too. He crouched down. These are his. But something about them felt off. They didn't return. They only went deeper into the forest. No hesitation. No backtrack. Just forward movement into the trees. Billow swallowed hard. He walked there alone. I shook my head before I could stop myself. No, he wouldn't. But the forest didn't care what we believed. We followed the prints anyway. Because what else do you do when someone disappears without a sound? The trees grew thicker the deeper we went. The air colder. The silence heavier. And the footprints stayed fresh. That's what made it worse. It hadn't rained. There was no moisture. And yet the marks in the soil looked new. Like they were made seconds ago. Sod suddenly stopped. Wait. We all froze. He pointed ahead. The footprints ended. Just like that. No fatting. No turning. Just stopping. In the middle of the forest. As if whoever made them had simply stopped existing. I felt something twist in my stomach. Where did he go? I whispered. No one answered. Because there was nowhere for him to go. No trees had been disturbed. No ground broken. No sign of anything lifting him, dragging him, or taking him. Just gone. Billow stepped back slowly. This isn't normal. Sod laughed once. But it wasn't humor. It was fear trying to disguise itself. Yeah, no shit. We stood there for a long time. Too long. Because none of us wanted to be the first to suggest what we were all thinking. That something here didn't just take people. It erased them. From space. From memory. From logic. We started back toward camp, but no one spoke. Not even the usual questions. Because questions felt dangerous now. Like asking them might make you next. Halfway back, I noticed something strange. The forest felt different again, but not like before. Not watching, not listening. This time it felt rearranged, like something had moved the world slightly while we weren't looking. Paths didn't match anymore. Landmarks were subtly wrong. Even the direction of the wind felt off. Saad noticed too. We're not walking the same way. Bilal stopped. I think we are. But none of us sounded sure, because confidence didn't survive here for long. When we finally reached the camp, something was wrong again. The fire was gone. Not out. Gone. No ashes. No smoke. Just empty ground where it had been. And our things, they were moved. Not scattered. Arranged. Neatly. Carefully. Like someone had organized them while we were gone. Saad froze completely. We didn't leave it like this. No one replied. Because now the question was what happened to Armin. The question was, who stayed here while we were looking for him? Bilal walked slowly toward the bags, then stopped. There's more missing. I already knew what he meant. I checked my pack instinctively. Nothing taken, but Armin's bag was gone. Completely. As if it had never existed. That's when Saad said something quietly. What if he didn't just disappear? We turned to him. He hesitated, then continued. What if he was removed? The word didn't belong here, but it fit too well. Removed. Like an error corrected. Like something the forest decided didn't belong. A sound came from the trees behind us. Soft. Almost like breathing. We all turned at once. Nothing there. But I noticed something else. Fresh footprints. Again. Leading away from the camp. This time there were two sets. We didn't speak. We just stared. Because now we understood something none of us wanted to accept. The forest wasn't taking people randomly. It was counting. And we were still inside that count. Saad whispered, barely audible. We should have left when we had 4. The dock creaked before we even stepped on it. Not the normal kind of creak wood makes. This one sounded tired. Like it remembered too many things. We shouldn't have gone back to the lake after what we saw in the forest. After Armin disappeared. But we did. Because silence after loss is worse than fear. It gives your mind too much space to fill in answers you don't want. Saad was the one who suggested it first. We missed something, he said quietly. Bilal shook his head immediately. We missed everything. But Saad was already walking. And I followed. Because at that point, stopping felt more dangerous than moving. The lake looked the same as before. Still water. Dark reflection. No wind. But it didn't feel the same anymore. It felt aware. Like it had learned our names. The old wooden dock stretched into it like a broken finger. Half rotten. Half still standing. We hadn't checked it properly before. We were too busy trying not to think. Now it felt like the only place left that might still hold answers. Saad stepped onto it first. The wood sank slightly under his weight. Not broken. Just accepting. Bilal hesitated. I don't like this. I didn't either. But I still stepped forward. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't always stop you. Sometimes it just walks with you. The dock led to nothing obvious. Just water beneath. But halfway across, Saad stopped. Pointed down. There. At first I didn't see it. Then I crouched. And my stomach tightened. There was a gap between the wooden planks. A section that had been recently moved. Not broken. lifted, like someone had opened it and carefully put it back. Billow whispered, "That wasn't like that before." No one disagreed. Sod knelt slowly, pulled at one plank. It resisted for a second, then gave way with a soft crack. And that's when we saw it. A space beneath the dock. Not natural, not accidental. A hidden cavity under the structure. Dark, wet, and wrong. The smell hit us first. Not rotten fish. Not lake water. Something worse. Metallic. Old. Like rust mixed with something living. Billow stepped back immediately. "I'm not going down there." Sod didn't respond. He just stared into the dark space like it was staring back. Then he climbed down. Slow. Careful. Like he already knew what he might find. I followed. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't leave him alone with it. The space under the dock was smaller than I expected. Barely enough to stand. The water was inches below us. Black. Still, but not silent. It made soft sounds. Not waves. More like breathing trapped under glass. And then we saw the first thing. A bag. Old. Half submerged. Sod picked it up carefully. Zipper rusted. Inside. Photographs. Dozens of them. We froze instantly. Because they weren't random. They were people. Travelers. Hikers. Campers. All near this lake. All smiling in the photos. And all crossed out. Red ink. Thick lines through their faces. Billow's voice shook. "These are missing people reports." Sod flipped through them faster now. And then stopped. His hand went still. I looked, and my blood went cold. Armand. His photo was there too. Fresh ink. Newer than the rest. But he wasn't alone. There was another face beside him. Crossed out the same way. But I didn't recognize it. Sod swallowed hard. "Who is that?" No one answered. Because none of us knew. But the implication was clear. Armin wasn't the first. And he wouldn't be the last. We moved deeper under the dock. And that's when we saw the wall. It wasn't natural. Someone had built it. Wood panels nailed into the earth beneath the dock. Like a hidden room. A place meant to stay unseen. Billow backed away slightly. No way. But Sod was already pulling at one of the boards. It came loose with a groan. Behind it, scratches, deep ones, like fingernails, dozens of them, all dragging in the same direction, all leading inward. I stepped closer without thinking, and then I saw something else. Names, carved into the wood, not random, not scattered. A list, long, some faded, some fresh, and at the bottom, 4 empty scratches. Not names yet, just marks waiting to become them. Sod whispered, "This is a list." Billow shook his head. A list of what? No one wanted to say it, because the answer already sat in the air between us. A count. The forest wasn't just removing people. The lake wasn't just hiding them. Something was keeping track, and we were inside it now. A sudden sound came from above. Wood shifting on the dock. Slow footsteps. We all froze instantly, because no one was up there when we came down. Another step. Then another. Billow mouthed, "We're not alone." Sod grabbed my arm tightly. "Don't move." We listened. The steps stopped directly above us, right at the broken plank. A pause. Long. Too long. Then a soft sound, like something being set down. Carefully. Deliberately. I couldn't breathe properly anymore, because it sounded like someone was waiting. Not searching. Waiting. Then a voice. Low. Calm. Familiar. You shouldn't have come back here. My skin went cold instantly, because I recognized it. It was Armin. It was Sod. It was Billow. It sounded like mine, but I hadn't spoken. None of us had. Sod slowly looked up at the ceiling of wood above us. Who is that? No answer. Just silence again. But now the silence felt full, like it had weight, like someone was standing right above us, deciding what to do next. Billow whispered, "We need to get out." Sod nodded once, but when we turned toward the ladder, it was gone. The opening we came through was sealed. Not broken. Closed. Perfectly. Like it had never been there. That's when the water beneath us moved. Not waves. Not wind. Something rising. Slow. Deliberate. From under the dock. Sod stepped back instantly. Something in the water. I looked down and saw it. A shape. Not fully formed. Just darker than the darkness beneath us. Moving upward. Not swimming. Approaching. Billow lost it first. We're trapped. Sod grabbed the loose plank we had removed earlier. Break through it. We started hitting the wood above us. Hard. Vast. But it didn't give. It sounded wrong when we hit it. Not solid. Not hollow. Like hitting something that didn't want to be opened. The shape in the water got closer. Now just beneath us. Pressing upward. Like it knew exactly where we stood. Then it stopped. Right below Sod. And the voice came again. Calm. Closer now. You counted wrong. Silence. Total silence. Even the water stopped moving. And that's when I realized something I still can't explain. We weren't the ones discovering the dock. We were the ones being recorded. And something under us had just decided one of us didn't belong in the count anymore. The first thing I noticed wasn't the graveyard. It was the silence. Not normal silence. This was the kind that presses against your ears like wet cloth. Like the world is holding its breath and refusing to exhale. I stood at the iron gate for a full minute before I even moved. The caretaker job was supposed to be simple. Quiet work. Cut grass. Clean stones. Lock the gate at night. That's what the letter said. No mention of how the place would feel. No mention of the church behind it. No mention of why no one ever came here anymore. I pushed the gate open. It screamed softly. Not loud. Just enough to feel like it didn't want me here. Inside, the path stretched forward between rows of old graves. Some leaning. Some half sunk into the soil. Names faded like they were being slowly erased by time itself. But something felt off immediately. The air didn't smell like soil. It smelled stale. Like something trapped here a long time ago and never left. I told myself it was just isolation. That my mind was adjusting. That's what I always do when things feel wrong. I walked forward anyway. The small caretaker hut sat near the edge of the graveyard. Old wooden structure. One window. One door. That's where I was supposed to stay. Inside, everything was already there. Bed. Chair. A small stove, even food in a cupboard, like someone had been expecting me. That should have been my first real warning. But I ignored it, because ignoring things is easier than questioning them. I spent the first hour unpacking, trying not to think about the divorce, trying not to think about the empty apartment I left behind, trying not to think at all. But every time I looked out the window, I saw the church, and something about it didn't sit right. It stood at the far end of the graveyard. Broken roof, collapsed tower, windows dark like empty eyes. But it didn't look abandoned in the way old buildings usually do. It looked paused, like it had stopped mid-breath and never started again. By evening, the sky turned heavy. Clouds pressed low over the cemetery. I stepped outside with a shovel and started cleaning the first grave. The name was barely readable. Eleanor Vance. No date I could make out. Just the shape of letters carved deep into stone. As I worked, I kept feeling it. That pressure again, like something was watching without eyes. I turned once. Nothing there. Only rows of graves stretching into trees. But when I looked back down, the dirt on the grave was already disturbed again, like something beneath it had shifted. I stopped, listened. Nothing, but silence here didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. I finished quickly and went back inside. Locked the door, sat down, tried to ignore how the room felt slightly smaller than before. Night came faster than expected. It always does in places like this. When darkness settles early, it feels intentional, like it's helping something hide. I was halfway asleep when I heard it. A soft sound outside, metal dragging against stone. I sat up immediately, listened. Nothing for a moment. Then again. Scrape. Slow. Deliberate. I walked to the window, looked out. The graveyard was darker now, but not empty. Something moved between the graves. Low, barely visible. I blinked, and it stopped, just like that, as if it knew I had seen it. My breath got stuck in my throat. I stepped back from the window slowly, told myself it was a deer, or wind, or anything else the mind invents when it refuses truth. But then I heard footsteps outside the hut, right next to the door. Not rushing, not random, standing, waiting. I didn't move, didn't breathe, and then something tapped lightly on the wood. Once, twice, 3 times. Polite, patient, like it expected an answer. I didn't give one. The tapping stopped. Silence returned. But now it felt closer than before, like silence had moved inside with me. I stayed awake until morning. Didn't sleep. Didn't dare. When the sun finally rose, the graveyard looked normal again. Almost peaceful. That made it worse, because nothing should reset that quickly. I stepped outside carefully, checked the ground near the door. No footprints. No marks, just soft soil untouched. But when I looked toward the church, the front door was slightly open. I froze. I hadn't seen it open before. I was sure of it. I walked slowly toward it, each step louder than it should have been. The grass didn't move under my feet the way it should, like it was resisting. Halfway there I stopped, because I saw something new. A grave I hadn't noticed before, right near the church path. Fresh soil. No name yet. Just dirt that looked recently turned. My stomach tightened, because I knew I hadn't dug anything there. and no one else should be here. I continued anyway, because that's what people do when they don't want to accept what they're seeing. They get closer. The church door creaked slightly in the wind. Still open. Still waiting. Inside, it was darker than it should have been, even with sunlight behind me. The air felt colder immediately, like I had stepped into something sealed off from the world. Wooden pews lined the room. Dust everywhere, except near the center aisle. That part was clean. Too clean. Like something had been dragged recently. I walked forward slowly. My footsteps echoed too loudly. Then I saw it. The altar. And behind it, marks on the floor. Scratches. Deep ones. Dragging toward a door in the ground. A hatch. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for it. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew that before I did. But I did anyway. The hatch creaked open slowly. Cold air rose from beneath it. And with it, a smell. Fresh soil. Like something had been buried recently. A ladder led down into darkness. I hesitated. Listened. Nothing. Then a sound came from below. Soft. Like something shifting its weight. I went down. Step by step. Each one colder than the last. The air changed halfway. No longer stale. No longer empty. Now it felt occupied. At the bottom, there was a small underground chamber. Dirt walls. Uneven ground. And graves. Not marked. Not organized. Just bodies of earth shaped like resting places. Some new. Some old. And all of them connected. Chains ran through the soil. Thin metal lines stretching from grave to grave. Like everything down here was linked. Like everything was part of something larger. My breath shook. Then I saw the names, carved into wooden tags stuck into the dirt. Dozens of them. Some faded, some fresh, and one near the front caught my eye instantly. My own name, not fully carved, still being written. I stepped back immediately, hit the wall, and that's when I heard it. From above, the church door closing. Slowly, carefully, not slammed, not rushed, just sealed. And then footsteps again. Above me, walking across the church floor. But I was supposed to be alone. I looked up toward the ceiling and saw something I will never forget. A shadow standing directly above the hatch, waiting, like it had known I would come down here. And now, it had nowhere left to wait except above me. I didn't notice the cabin at first. It was just another row of graves, old stone, half swallowed by weeds, leaning like tired men. But something behind them felt wrong, like the air was thicker there, heavier. And then I saw it. A wooden shape, half hidden, sunk low into the ground behind the oldest graves where no visitor ever walked. A cabin. My breath stopped before my mind caught up. Why would anyone build something behind a graveyard where no one comes? The wind moved through the broken trees, and for a second I thought I heard something inside it. Not leaves, not branches. A sound like someone shifting their weight. I told myself it was nothing, but I still walked closer. Each step felt louder than it should have. Gravel under my boots didn't crunch right. It sounded soft, like the ground was trying to swallow the noise. The cabin came into full view when I pushed through the last line of graves. Small old run. The wood was dark, soaked with years of rain. The windows were boarded from inside, not outside. That detail made my stomach tighten for reasons I couldn't explain yet. who locks themselves in from the inside. The door had no handle, only a metal latch wrapped in a rusted chain. And something worse, scratches around the edges, deep ones, fresh enough that the wood hadn't healed them yet. I stood there for a long time without moving. Then I noticed something else. The graves near the cabin weren't random. They formed a half circle around it, like it had been placed there on purpose, like the dead were keeping it in. My mouth went dry. I should have left right then. I knew that. Every rational part of me was screaming it. But I stayed, because I heard it again. A sound from inside the cabin. Not a knock, not footsteps. Breathing, slow, controlled, like someone was trying not to be heard but failing. I stepped back without thinking, heart suddenly too loud in my chest. "Hello," I called out. My voice felt stupid the second it left my mouth. No answer. Only the breathing stopped. That silence hit harder than any sound. I waited, counted the seconds in my head. 5, 10, 15. Then, a soft scrape came from inside the wall. Not the door. The wall. Like something was dragging itself across the inside wood. My skin went cold. I moved closer again, slower this time. Against my better judgment, my flashlight shook slightly in my hand even though I wasn't trying to move it. I pressed it toward the cracks between the boards. Nothing at first. Just darkness. Then, a shape. Too fast to understand. Something pale moved behind the wood, just for a second, like it realized it was seen. I stepped back immediately. My boot hit a stone behind me, and I almost fell. That's when I saw it. Fresh footprints. In the dirt around the cabin. Not mine. They came from the tree line, circled the cabin, and stopped right where I was standing. Then turned back, like someone had been watching me arrive. My throat tightened, because the prints weren't leaving. They were already there, already formed, already dried, which meant someone had been standing there before me, watching the cabin, watching me approach it, and I hadn't seen them. A chill crawled up my spine, so fast it felt physical. I turned slowly toward the trees. Nothing, just darkness between trunks. But the feeling didn't go away. It got worse, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I stepped back again, trying to decide whether to run or stay. My legs didn't listen properly. Everything felt slightly delayed, like my body was thinking behind my mind. Then the cabin door creaked. Not open, not closed, just shifted, like something inside had leaned against it. I froze. Every instinct I had told me to leave. But another part of me, some stupid, broken curiosity, kept me there. I whispered, "Is someone there?" A long silence. Then a sound came. Not from inside. From above me. I looked up. The roof was old, slanted, half collapsed in places, and for a second I saw something move along the edge. Slow, deliberate, like someone crawling just out of sight. I stepped back so fast my heel sank into the wet ground. That's when I finally turned to run. But I stopped, because now I could hear it clearly. Footsteps. Not inside the cabin. Not above it. Behind me. In the trees. Slow. Matching my movements. I turned sharply. Nothing. But the steps stopped the exact moment I stopped. I backed away from the cabin, never taking my eyes off the forest. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop completely. The footprints I saw earlier, the ones circling the cabin, they were changing. Slowly, fresh impressions were appearing inside them. as if someone invisible was stepping into the same tracks again, following me, or replaying me. I don't know which thought scared me more. My breath came too fast now. I forced myself to move, one step at a time, backward toward the graves. The cabin stayed silent. Too silent. That was worse than any sound. I reached the edge of the grave circle and finally turned away. And that's when I saw it. A figure, standing between two graves. Still, watching. I couldn't see the face clearly, just the outline, tall, wrongly shaped like the posture didn't belong to a human body. It didn't move, didn't react, just stood there as if it had always been there, waiting for me to notice it. My mind screamed at me to run, and I did. I ran through the graveyard without looking back, branches scraping my arms, breath tearing out of my chest. The forest around me felt alive in a way it hadn't before. Not watching, following. When I finally stopped at the edge of the caretaker path, I turned back. The graveyard was empty. No figure, no movement, just rows of stones in the fog. But I knew something I couldn't unknow now. That cabin wasn't abandoned. It was occupied, and whatever was inside it wasn't trying to leave. It was trying to be seen. That night I didn't sleep, because around midnight I heard something outside the caretaker building. Slow footsteps, circling, stopping just beneath my window. And then, a soft scrape against the glass, like something was trying to remember what I looked like from the other side. I didn't move, didn't breathe, because I realized something sitting in the dark of my room. The footprints in the graveyard didn't stop when I ran. They followed, and now they were here, outside my door, waiting for me to open it. But what I still can't understand is this one thing. If it followed me here, why does it feel like I was the one who brought it out of that cabin in the first place? The first thing I saw when I forced the cabin door open was the smell. Not rot, not dust, something worse, like old paper soaked in wet earth. It hit my throat instantly, and I almost stepped back, but I didn't, because something inside told me I had already crossed a line I couldn't undo. The inside was darker than I expected. Not just lack of light, something heavier, like the room was holding its own shadow too tightly. My flashlight cut through it in a thin beam. Walls, bare wood walls, but not bare for long, because the wood was covered in names. At first I thought it was scratches, random marks, maybe old damage. But as I stepped closer, my chest tightened. These weren't scratches. They were written. Names carved into the walls, some deep, some shallow, some so old the wood had started to swell around them. And some looked fresh, like they had been added recently. My hand trembled as I lifted the light higher. The names weren't random either. They were grouped, clusters, dates beside them, small notes scratched underneath. My throat went dry when I read the first one clearly. Elia's ward went missing near Highway 16. I froze. That highway wasn't far from here. I moved the light slowly across the wall. Another name. Marie Collins, last seen at Blackwood Edge. My stomach dropped a little further, because I knew that name. It was in an old report I once saw during my first week here. A missing person case, closed, never solved. My breathing got heavier without permission. I stepped deeper into the cabin. The floor creaked under me, slow and tired, like it didn't want me here either. More names covered the far wall. Dozens, maybe more. Some were crossed out. Some weren't. Some had small symbols carved next to them that I didn't understand. like markings, not letters, not numbers. Something older, something intentional. And then I saw something that made my skin go cold. A section of the wall where the wood had been replaced. New planks, fresh nails, but still carved into it. Names, different handwriting, different pressure, like multiple people had done it over time. I moved closer without thinking. My flashlight shook slightly. One name stood out from the rest. Because it wasn't a stranger. It was a town record name. A man who was officially found, dead 3 years ago. Accident closed case, buried. But here it was again. Written into the wall of a cabin that shouldn't even exist. My mind tried to reject it, tried to explain it away. But my body didn't listen. Because I heard something behind me. A soft sound. Like wood shifting under weight. I turned fast. Nothing. Just the door slightly moving in the wind. But I hadn't felt wind before. I swallowed hard and turned back to the wall. And that's when I noticed the lower section. It was hidden behind a broken cabinet. I moved it slowly, the wood scraping against the floor. Behind it was a section of wall that looked different. Darker, smoother, like it had been touched more often than the rest. I lifted the light, and my breath stopped completely. The names here weren't carved. They were written, not with a knife, with something else. Something that looked like ink at first. But when I leaned closer, I realized it wasn't ink at all. It was something dried, something old, something that had soaked into the wood and stayed there. The handwriting was messy, rushed, panicked, like whoever wrote it wasn't supposed to be writing at all. My fingers hovered near the wall without touching it. One sentence stood out beneath the names. The cabin does not keep records. It makes them. My stomach dropped so hard I had to step back. My flashlight flickered for a second. Just once, but enough to make the shadows jump. I forced myself to breathe slower. Think. Explain it. There had to be an explanation. Old caretaker records, missing persons logs, someone obsessed. But none of it explained the graves outside. None of it explained the footprints. And none of it explained the way the names felt, alive. Like they were not just recorded. Like they were still happening. A sound came again. This time from above me. A soft drag. Something moving across the ceiling. Slow. Careful. Like it was listening to me think. I looked up instinctively. Nothing visible. But I saw dust fall. Not natural dust. Disturbed dust. Something had moved up there recently. Or was still moving. My throat tightened again. I took a step back toward the door without turning my back fully. That's when I noticed the table. Small. Old. In the center of the room. I hadn't seen it before. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to. On it sat a stack of papers, held down by a rusted weight. My feet moved toward it before I could stop myself. Each step felt like it belonged to someone else. Not me. The papers were brittle, yellowed, some stapled, some clipped, some just stacked like they had been dropped and forgotten. The top sheet had a title, Unregistered Burial Log, Local Area 1978-1994. My hands went cold. I flipped it. Names again. Same names from the wall, but this time with details. Dates, locations, small notes like, last seen near water, reported leaving town but never arrived, body never recovered. My chest tightened harder with every line, because the pattern wasn't random. It was organized, carefully, repeated, like someone was maintaining it or feeding it. Then I saw something that made my stomach twist. A blank column labeled status. Some were marked confirmed. Some were marked missing. But a few, just a few, were marked active. My hand froze over the page. Active, not missing, not dead. Active. A cold thought crept into my mind before I could stop it. What does active mean in a graveyard log? A noise broke the silence. Not inside the room. Outside, near the trees. Slow footsteps. Circling again. I backed away from the table immediately, papers shaking slightly in my grip. The cabin felt smaller now. Closer. Like it had adjusted while I wasn't paying attention. I turned toward the door and stopped because the names on the wall had changed. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough. New ones had appeared. Fresh scratches, still pale, still raw. And one of them, right in the center, was my name. I dropped the papers. They scattered across the floor like dead leaves. My heart slammed so hard, I thought it might crack something inside me. I shook my head. No, that's not possible. But my voice sounded weak, uncertain, because I hadn't written it. I hadn't been here before, and yet it was there, fresh, waiting, as if it had always known I would come. A creak sounded behind me, slow, deliberate, from inside the cabin. Not the door, not the ceiling, the wall, the same wall of names. Something inside it moved, pressing outward, like it was trying to remember how to get through. My breath stopped completely. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because I finally understood something I didn't want to understand. The cabin wasn't recording the dead. It was recording what was still becoming dead. And now it had started recording me. Outside, the footsteps stopped right at the door. No more circling. No more waiting. Just stillness. As if whatever was out there had finally arrived at the same conclusion I had. I took one slow step backward. The wall behind me shifted again. Closer this time. And a new name began to form beside mine. Still incomplete. Still being written. As if something inside the cabin was deciding how my story should end. The storm didn't start like a storm. It started like silence breaking. One moment the road was just cold and empty, my headlights cutting through thin fog. The next moment, snow hit the windshield so hard it sounded like gravel. Then everything disappeared. White, endless white. The radio crackled once before dying completely. No signal, no GPS, no map, just me and a road that was slowly vanishing under the storm. I remember thinking it would pass quickly. That was my first mistake. Because 10 minutes later, I couldn't even tell where the road ended and the forest began. My tires slipped. Once, then again. And then the car just stopped responding the way it should. Like the road had decided I didn't belong on it anymore. I pulled over because I had no choice. The engine was still running, but the sound felt weak, smaller than before, like even it was afraid of the storm outside. I sat there for a moment, staring into the whiteout. No houses, no lights, no movement, just snow falling in thick, angry layers. That's when I saw it, a shape between the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of the headlights reflecting off the snow. But it didn't move like a reflection. It stayed there, still, watching. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. The shape didn't look like an animal. Too upright, too steady. And then it stepped back into the trees, disappearing like it had never been there at all. My throat tightened. I told myself it was just visibility, just weather distortion. But my hands were already shaking when I turned the car back on. The engine coughed. Once, twice, then died completely. The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. No engine, no radio, no wind noise inside the car. Just the muffled roar of the storm outside the glass. I tried again. Nothing. The dashboard lights flickered and faded like they were being erased. That's when I understood something simple. I wasn't going anywhere. I sat back and exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think. Stay calm. Find shelter. Wait it out. But when I looked around again, the road markers were gone. Even the tracks behind me were already filled in, like I had never been here at all. Then I saw it, a faint shape farther up the road. Not a person this time. A structure, low, dark, half buried in snow. A cabin. My first instinct was relief, then hesitation, because something about it felt too placed, too convenient, like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. Still, I didn't have a choice. I grabbed my camera bag, shoved it under my coat, and stepped out of the car. The cold hit instantly. Not normal cold. Something sharper, like the air had edges. Each step toward the cabin felt heavier than the last. The snow came up to my knees in places, slowing me down, making every movement feel delayed. The wind wasn't just blowing. It was pushing me toward the cabin, or away from everything else. I couldn't tell. When I finally reached it, I noticed the details I hadn't seen from the road. The wood was old, too old, blackened by time and weather, but not rotted, preserved, like the storm had been protecting it instead of destroying it. The door was slightly open, just a crack, enough for heat loss, or enough for an invitation. I stood there for a moment, staring at it. Then I heard something behind me, just snow shifting. I turned fast. Nothing, only trees and falling white. But the feeling of being watched didn't leave. It got closer. I stepped inside. The cabin was warmer than I expected. Not warm like fire. Warm like it had recently been occupied. That thought made my stomach tight immediately. Inside, everything was still. Too still. A small wooden table. 2 chairs. A fireplace with old ash inside it. And a coat hanging near the wall. Fresh. Not frozen. Not dusty. Fresh. I froze. Because that meant someone had been here. Or was still here. I slowly set my bag down without taking my eyes off the coat. Then I noticed something else. Footprints. Not outside. Inside. Wet ones. Leading from the door deeper into the cabin. But they didn't come back. Only went forward. My breathing slowed without permission. I followed them. Each step made the floor creak in a way that felt too loud for a place this isolated. The footprints led to a second room. A small storage space. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and immediately regretted it. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Pinned to the walls. Old, faded, weather-damaged pictures of the same forest I had just walked through. But something was wrong with them, because in each photo, The storm was already there, even in images taken during summer. Snow falling where there shouldn't be snow. White shapes in the distance that looked too human to ignore. I stepped closer. My camera bag suddenly felt heavier. Then I saw one photo that made my breath stop completely. It was me, standing near my car, taken from the trees. My face turned slightly, like I had sensed something just before the photo was captured. My hands went cold instantly. I had never been here before, never taken this road in daylight like this. So how? A floorboard creaked behind me. Slow, deliberate. I turned around. Nothing, but the air felt different now. Tighter, like the cabin had shifted its attention toward me. The photographs on the wall trembled slightly in the draft. Or maybe something else was moving them. I backed out of the storage room slowly. My heart wasn't racing yet. It was calculating, trying to understand what wasn't making sense. The storm outside suddenly grew louder, like it had moved closer, or like it was pressing against the walls. Then I heard it. A knock from outside the cabin. Slow, measured, 3 taps. I didn't move. The sound came again. Same rhythm, same place, front door, but I hadn't heard anyone approach. I stepped back without thinking, pressing myself against the wall. Another knock, this time softer, almost patient, like whoever was outside knew I was listening. I turned my head slightly toward the window. Snow covered most of it now, but through the blur, I thought I saw a shape standing just beyond the glass. Still, waiting, not trying to enter, not leaving, just there, as if it had always been there. My throat tightened, because I realized something I didn't want to admit. The storm wasn't trapping me inside this cabin. It was revealing it, and whatever had been outside the whole time had followed me here on purpose. Another knock echoed through the cabin, but this time, it came from inside the wall behind me. The first night I heard it, I thought it was the wind, but the second night I knew it was. I was lying awake in the upstairs room of the cabin, snow pressed so hard against the windows it felt like the world outside had been erased. No roads, no forest, just white silence. Even my phone had stopped working hours ago. No signal, no clock, nothing to measure time except the sound of my own breathing. And then from above me came the crying. Soft, broken, like someone trying not to be heard. I sat up so fast the bed frame creaked under me. The sound stopped immediately. That was the first thing that didn't feel right, because when I moved, it reacted. I told myself it was exhaustion. Blizzards mess with your head. That's what people always say. But deep down, I already knew I wasn't alone in this cabin. The problem was simple. There was no upstairs room above mine. At least there shouldn't have been. The cabin was small when I first checked it. 2 rooms downstairs, a narrow staircase, and what I assumed was just storage space up top. The door at the end of the hallway had been locked from the outside with an old iron latch. I didn't think much of it at first. Old hunting cabins do strange things to their layouts. But now, every night, the crying came from behind that door. And every night, it started at exactly the same time. Midnight. The first time I went near it, I told myself I was just checking for structural noise. That's all. Wood shifts in the cold, pipes groan, snow presses on roofs, normal things. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, flashlight in hand, listening. Nothing. Then midnight passed, and the crying started. So suddenly, it felt like someone had turned on a hidden speaker inside the walls. I froze. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It was worse than screaming because it sounded real, human, close. A woman's voice, maybe younger, maybe older, I couldn't tell. Just pain, and underneath it something else. Like she knew I was listening. I stepped onto the stairs. Each step creaked louder than the last, like the cabin itself was warning me. Halfway up, I stopped. The crying stopped too. That was the second thing that didn't feel right. I whispered hello. Nothing answered. So I went back down. That was the first night. I didn't sleep after that. The second night, I tried to ignore it. I stuffed my ears with cloth, turned on a battery lantern, and sat in the corner of the room pretending I was somewhere else. A motel, a bus station, anywhere normal. But midnight came again, and the crying came back. Except this time, it wasn't just crying. There were words. I pulled the cloth out of my ears slowly, like I was afraid of what I might hear more clearly. A voice, shaking, whispered, "Don't open it, don't open it." I stood up immediately. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor, its beam spinning wildly across the walls. And for a split second, I saw something I shouldn't have seen. Scratches. Deep, old scratches along the upstairs doorframe. Like fingernails had tried to dig their way out. My chest tightened, because I hadn't noticed them before. Or maybe they weren't there before. The voice stopped again. Silence returned so fast it felt unnatural. I grabbed the flashlight and backed away. That's when I made my first real mistake. I said out loud, "Who's there?" And from upstairs, something answered. Not with words, with a knock. One single knock. From inside the locked room. I didn't go upstairs that night. But I didn't sleep either. The third night was when the snow got worse. It wasn't just a storm anymore. It felt like the mountain itself had closed around me. The windows were completely buried now. No light, no horizon, just thick white pressure on every side. The cabin felt smaller, closer, like it was shrinking around me. And the crying had changed. It wasn't just at midnight anymore. It started earlier, around 11, and now it didn't stop. It came in waves, sometimes sobbing, sometimes whispering, sometimes just breathing. Too close. I finally forced myself up the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, not physically, mentally, like I was walking towards something I was not supposed to see. The locked door was still there. Old wood, dark stains around the edges, the iron latch frozen in place. I held my flashlight up, and I noticed something new. Names, carved into the doorframe. Dozens of them. Some deep, some shallow, some scratched so violently the wood had split. I leaned closer, and my stomach dropped. One of the names was mine. I stepped back so fast, I nearly fell down the stairs. My mind tried to reject it, tried to explain it. Frost damage, old cabin, coincidence, anything. But the name was there. Clear, fresh, like it had been carved recently. Behind me, the crying stopped again. And this time, the silence felt like it was waiting. I don't remember deciding to speak. I just did. What is this place? For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lock on the door clicked. Not opened, just responded, like something inside heard me. I ran back downstairs. I should have left that moment. I know that now. I should have walked into the snow and never looked back. But the storm had already made that impossible. I was trapped, and something inside that room knew it. The fourth night is the one I don't like thinking about, because that's when I stopped being sure if the sound was coming from upstairs or inside my own head. I woke up on the floor. I don't remember falling asleep. The lantern was off. The cabin was dark except for faint gray light leaking through the frozen windows. And then I heard it again. Not crying this time. Breathing. Right behind me. I turned slowly. Nothing there. But the upstairs door was open a crack. I swear it wasn't before. I climbed the stairs without thinking. No fear, no hesitation, just this strange pull like something was guiding me. The door was open now. Just slightly. Enough for a thin line of darkness to spill out into the hallway. I stepped closer. My hand touched the wood. Cold. Too cold. And then I heard her voice again. Right on the other side. Not crying this time. Just saying my name. Soft. Careful. Like she had been waiting a long time to finally say it correctly. I don't know what I expected to see. A person, a room, maybe nothing at all. But what I saw when I pushed the door open was not a room. It was deeper than that. Too deep. Like the space inside didn't match the outside walls. And in the center of it, something moved. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. But I saw enough. Scratch walls. Hundreds of names. All repeating. All shifting slightly when I wasn't focusing on them. And at the very back, a bed. Still warm. Like someone had just gotten up. Behind me, the door slowly started to close on its own. And right before it shut completely, I heard her whisper one last thing. You finally found us. The door clicked shut, and the lock engaged from the inside. I ran. Down the stairs, out of the room, into the freezing dark of the cabin like something was chasing me even though nothing followed. But the sound stayed. Not behind me. Everywhere. All at once. And now I understand something I didn't before. The cabin wasn't empty. It was occupied. And whatever is upstairs never stopped living there. Not even when the door was locked. The first photo fell out of the wall before I even touched it. I wasn't digging, I wasn't searching. I was just standing there, trying to calm my breathing after what I saw upstairs. My hands were still shaking when I leaned against the cabin wall. That's when I heard it. A soft crack behind the wood. Then a small piece of paper slid through a gap in the boards and dropped onto the floor. I stared at it for a few seconds, not moving. Because deep down, I already knew it wasn't random. The cabin was giving me something. Or warning me. I picked it up slowly. It was a photograph. Old, yellowed, curved at the edges like it had been hidden for years. At first, it looked normal. A group of people standing outside this same cabin. Smiling, wearing winter clothes from another time, heavy coats, old boots. One of them was holding a lantern. But then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The cabin behind them looked exactly the same. Same broken railing, same crooked window frame, same tree leaning too close to the roof. Nothing had changed, except the people, because I recognized one of them. It was the man who rented me this place. Except this photo looked at least 30 years old. My throat went dry. I turned the photo over. There was writing on the back. Names. 5 of them. And next to each name, a date. I checked the dates carefully. My fingers went cold. They weren't random. They matched missing persons reports I remembered reading online years ago. People who disappeared in this region. Hikers, travelers, one journalist. Gone without a trace. I dropped the photo like it burned me. And for a moment, the cabin felt too quiet. That was the first real realization. It wasn't abandoned. It was archived. I backed away from the wall slowly, watching it like it might move. That's when the second photo slid out. Then the third. Then more. One by one, they started falling from inside the walls like the cabin had been holding its breath for years. I didn't want to look, but I did, because I needed to understand what I was standing in. Each photo showed the same place. Different years, different people, but always the cabin. Always the same smile from someone in the frame who shouldn't have been smiling. And always one thing missing. An exit. I sat down on the floor without meaning to. The photos spread around me like spilled memories. And then I saw something worse. A pattern. In every picture, someone was standing just slightly out of place. Not facing the camera. Always half-turned. Always blurred. Like they didn't belong in the moment. Or like the camera refused to capture them properly. I picked one photo up again. This one showed a group of 3 people standing near the lake. And behind them, barely visible, was the cabin again. But this time the door was open. And in the doorway, someone was standing, watching. I zoomed in with my eyes, not daring to breathe. The figure was too dark, too still. But I swear I could feel its attention. Not on the group, on whoever was holding the camera. I dropped it again. My heart was beating so hard, I thought it might echo through the walls. And then I heard it. A sound upstairs. Slow footsteps. Moving across the floor I had just seen yesterday. My entire body froze. I didn't want to go back up there. But I also didn't want to stay sitting in a room full of dead faces. So I did something stupid. I followed the sound. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step louder than my thoughts. Halfway up, I stopped again. Not because of fear this time. Because of something else. A smell. Old paper. Like photographs left in sunlight too long. The upstairs door was open again. Just slightly, and inside I could see movement. Not fast, not violent, just slow shifting shadows, like someone was turning pages. I pushed the door open, and everything stopped. The room was different again. It shouldn't have been possible. The walls were now covered completely. Photos everywhere, pinned, stapled, taped. Some carved into the wood itself. And all of them showed the same thing. People arriving. People staying. People not leaving. I stepped inside without realizing it. The door behind me clicked shut. But I didn't turn around. Because I was looking at the center of the room. A table. And on that table was a stack of fresh photographs. Still warm. Like they had just been printed. My name was on the top one. I picked it up slowly. It showed me, standing inside this room, holding the same photograph, looking directly at the camera. Except I don't remember ever being in that picture. I don't remember it being taken. And behind me in the photo was someone standing in the doorway, watching me take it. I dropped it instantly. My mind started to fight itself. This isn't real. Cameras don't work like this. Photos don't predict the future. This is stress, isolation, snow. Something is wrong with me. But then I saw something that erased all of that. A wall of missing person reports. Printed, pinned, organized. Names I recognized from news articles. From old searches I once did years ago out of curiosity. And next to every name was a photo. The same cabin. The same room. Different people. Always ending here. I stumbled back until I hit the wall. My hand pressed against the wood instinctively. And the wood felt warm. like something was on the other side, breathing. Then I noticed something carved just below my hand. Fresh cuts, still pale, still sharp. A sentence: "You are not the first to look." My breath stopped completely because I realized something I didn't want to accept. The cabin wasn't just collecting photos, it was collecting arrivals. People who came here alone, people who stayed too long, people who started asking questions. Just like me. The lights flickered above. Once, twice, and in that brief darkness between flickers, I saw another photograph appear on the table. I didn't hear it being placed. I didn't see anyone move. It was just there. And in it, I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, looking up, watching myself from earlier. That's when I finally understood the real question. It was, why am I here? It was, how many versions of me had already been here before I even arrived? The room creaked softly, like it was adjusting to that thought. And from somewhere inside the walls, I heard a voice again. Not calling me, not warning me, just calmly saying, "Stay still, this part always takes a while." The photos around me shifted slightly, just enough to make me realize something worse. They weren't memories, they were stages, and mine had already begun.